Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto becomes a wolf bijuu. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by the Engulfing Silence and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. A fortunate meeting and a strong beginning. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. A long time ago there existed a 9-tailed fox. With one swing of its mighty tails it could destroy mountains and cause tsunamis. This fox, which was known simply as the Kyuubi no Yoko, was considered the most powerful entity on earth. A demon, it along with 8 others of varying tails numbered 1 through 9, were known as the bijuu. However, very little is known about these beings. And sometimes, things are not always what they seem. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Sitting beside his window and looking out at the people walking by on the street, one Naruto Uzumaki wasn't sure whether to sigh or to cry. Naruto was a young boy of 5 years old, he had blonde hair and not the usual kind either. His was an odd golden blonde color that seemed to literally shine like the sun and startling blue eyes. However, the most prominent feature on his face were the 6 whisker marks, 3 on each side, running horizontally across his cheeks. The blonde-haired child was sitting alone in his apartment on his bed with his knees drawn up to his chest doing the same thing he did every day. Which was essentially wondering why he was alone, why no one liked him, and why all the villagers glared at him with such a fierce hatred it would make demons flinch in fear. Unfortunately, he had never been able to figure it out and had learned long ago that trying to would only give him a headache. Or make him even more depressed, whichever came first. He stared out of the window to his apartment and watched as people walked along the street below. Adults were walking, carrying their kids, holding hands with their significant others. Children were running through the street, playing tag or some other kind of game. Naruto often wished he could do those things, that he could have someone carry and hold him, that he could play games with the other kids, that he could be loved. But he knew it was nothing more than a dream, he knew what he would get if he went outside. There was only one person in the entire village who treated him with kindness. Just then someone knocked at the door and a smile split little Naruto's face as he ran to the door and swung it open. "Ajusan." He shouted his greeting to the old man who stood in his entryway. Hiruzen Sarutobi was an aging man in his mid to late 60s. He had graying hair and a wrinkled yet kind-looking face, which helped create his grandfatherly aura. He was wearing a long white robe with red lining that covered him from head to toe and a large white hat with the kanji for fire on the front. "Hello Naruto-kun," Sarutobi chuckled at the boy's enthusiastic greeting. He bent down and ruffled the boy's hair, getting a playful scowl from the young blonde. Despite the boy trying to knock the hand off of his head, he actually enjoyed the small gesture of affection due to the fact that he rarely ever got any. Something that Sarutobi was all too aware of. "I hear someone has a birthday today." You remembered, Naruto smiled brightly at the one person who never treated him like some kind of freak. Sarutobi was the only person who ever treated him kindly, coming to visit him when he had been in the orphanage, giving him this apartment after he had been found getting beaten by several drunk villagers. He was the only person who didn't hate Naruto. "Of course I remembered," Sarutobi said with a smile, "how could I forget? You've been yelling about it for a week now." Naruto blushed before his good mood faded a little, "No one else even bothers to figure out when my birthday is." Sarutobi winced at the desperation in the blonde's voice. In an effort to get rid of the boy's frown he stood up and held out his hand. "Why don't we go out and spend some time in the village to celebrate your birthday? There's a festival going on today that I think you would enjoy." Naruto frowned as his eyes clouded over. "I don't know if I want to." "Why not?" Sarutobi asked with a frown of his own. "You enjoyed the last time we went out, didn't you?" Truth was Naruto didn't, the last time they went out he was glared at. But he didn't want his Ajusan to worry, so he quickly shoved his own insecurities aside. "You're right. Let's go." Naruto grabbed the hand and began dragging an amused Sarutobi behind him. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Sarutobi frowned as he noticed the large scowl on the face of the ice cream vendor he and Naruto had just gotten ice cream from. Not that it was all that hard to notice, the man wasn't even attempting to hide it from the Hokage. Sighing, he looked at Naruto who was happily licking away at the large triple-scoop chocolate fudge sundae he had gotten. At least the boy was too busy to notice the man's glare, or so he thought. "Come on Naruto-kun," Sarutobi said, "why don't we try some of the games here?" "Okay." Naruto said before they began to move into the crowd. Everywhere they went it was the same reaction. People would give Sarutobi a differential bow, smile at him, right before they noticed the little blonde he was with. Then they would scowl, their eyes would glare, showing a hatred and maliciousness that shocked and depressed the aging man to his core. He tried not to let that bother him as Naruto led him around. They played several games, scooping up goldfish, a throwing game where if you knocked 3 bottles down, you'd earn a prize and several others. Many of the vendors made their displeasure at having the blonde inside their established booths clear, but with Saratobi there they were all smart enough not to try anything. However, not all people were being as tolerant with Naruto's presence. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Hey Takeshi, take a look at that damn demon. Walking around like he owns the place. I know what you mean. And the way our Hokage gives him such attention and preferential treatment, it makes me sick. Makes you wonder what if the Kyuubi has the Hokage under some kind of spell. Do you think it's possible? I mean, he may look old, but he is the strongest ninja in the village. So was the Yondaime, look at what the Kyuubi did to him. You're right. But what do we do? Some friends of mine are getting together tonight to mourn the passing of their loved ones. At least that's what everyone thinks is going to happen. Instead, we plan on taking that demon out once and for all. We won't let him walk around like he owns the place anymore. But wouldn't the Hokage notice when he goes missing? You know how the old man is about the Kyuubi. Don't worry about it, my friend is on the council, and when I informed him of what we were gonna do, he said that he would convince the other members to put the old man in a council meeting. With him out of the way there will be no one to stop us, those ninja who aren't getting drunk are patrolling the festival. No one will even be near the demon's apartment. So, you in? Sounds like a plan, I'm in. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. It was late at night when Naruto awoke to the sound of his door being busted in and his windows being broken. Jumping out of bed, the blonde had just enough time to stand up before the door to his bedroom was busted down. Two men were standing in the doorway, but only for a second before they stalked into the room, towards Naruto whose eyes had gone wide. What do you people want? Naruto asked as he backed away from them. He knew what they wanted, of course, this wasn't the first time this had happened. It had happened a few times before when he was living on the street, but he had thought he would be safe now that he had an apartment. Shut up, demon. You don't get to ask questions. One of the men shouted, spittle flying out of his mouth from the smell and the slight way he was swaying. The man was drunk. Not that Naruto knew or cared. Said blonde tried to get away only for both men to lunge and grab him. Naruto started kicking and screaming, trying to escape or at least alert someone who might help him. It was too bad Saratobi had so much faith in his people to do the right thing, even after all that had happened. Otherwise, he may have given Naruto an ambu guard to protect him. Alas, they were all being deployed elsewhere at the moment, ensuring that nothing happened during the festival. The men dragged Naruto out of his apartment, where about a dozen men were waiting. The moment the two came out, a cheer went up and thus began Naruto's torture. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Naruto screamed and tears came to his eyes as his hands were nailed to a wood fence with a kunai. His feet were dangling about 4 inches off the ground and his hands were above his head, blood was beginning to pour out of the wounds on his palms, down his arm, chest and back. Why are you doing this? Asked Naruto through his grit teeth as tears stained his cheeks. Why? Why? Shouted one of the men, because you killed our loved ones, that's why. But I didn't. Cried Naruto, what could he say to make these people understand? Like hell you didn't. Shouted another man, he pushed the one who shoved a kunai through Naruto's hands out of the way and smashed a fist into the blonde's stomach. Naruto gasped in pain and began to cough as all of the air was knocked from his lungs. That childlike visage you hold won't fool us, demon. We know all kitsune are tricksters. Well, guess what? This time the trick's on you. The mob soon began to take turns beating on the blonde, for the moment the only weapons used were fists and feet. They hit his face, his stomach, his ribs, one even kicked him in the crotch, claiming that demons shouldn't have children or some other tripe. All throughout it Naruto could do nothing more than cry out or gasp depending on how and where he was hit. And, they brought out weapons. The first thing they used was a broken bottle. The village who stabbed him with it did so on his left bicep, making blood begin to gush down onto his head. Another came up, this one with a kunai he somehow managed to get. He took it to the little blonde's face and began to carve out his whisker marks, not just opening them enough to pour out blood, but carving all the way through the flesh until the muscles of his jaw could be seen. Blood poured down his cheeks, running along his chin in a thick stream that looked like a miniature waterfall. The young boy's screams intensified, but that just seemed to goad the villagers on more. The number of wounds they inflicted on him were both numerous and horrifying. One man had used a pair of pliers and tore off Naruto's toenails, one by one. Another had taken a hot branding iron normally used for cattle and scalded his chest, face and stomach. When the man was finished, the whiskered blonde was suffering from multiple third-degree burns. Please, Naruto gasped, no more. I'll be good. I'll do whatever you want. Just please. You can't give us what we want. The dozen-strong mob roared. You can't give back all the people you killed. They continued their torture. One man busted Naruto's kneecaps with a mallet. Another had done the same to his feet. However, it was the last attack that hurt worst. A man came in with a pitchfork and stabbed it right in his stomach. More specifically, he was stabbed right where the seal was located. Gah. IHHHHH. Naruto's wails continued. If it weren't for the fact that the festival that celebrated the Yondaime sacrifice was still going on, and the council had managed to drag the Hokage into a meeting, they may have gotten caught. Had the villagers not been so drunk, they may have noticed the seal appear when Naruto's blood was smeared across it. As it was, the Hokage was not around to protect the demon, and the spot they had chosen to rid themselves of Konoha's stain was completely deserted of all life. As far as they were concerned, they had all the time in the world. The tortures seemed to continue until Naruto was nothing more than a lump of beaten and bloody flesh, barely even recognizable as a human. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was a hammer that smashed into his face and sent him into oblivion. Had the villagers been more observant, they may have spotted the second seal on top of the first one, a one-time defensive mechanism installed as a security device in case something ever damaged the main seal. As it was, they didn't, and they would soon pay the price. The villagers sent up a cheer, believing that the Kyuubi was finally dead. However, as this cheer went up, a red energy burst from the lump of raw flesh. It happened too fast for the villagers to even notice. Red chakra burst forth from the blonde and formed 9 tails that then shot out, piercing each and every one of them. They didn't even get a chance to scream as it burned their flesh, then their muscles and organs, and finally, their bones. Soon the villagers were nothing more than dust that scattered on the wind. Sometime during the night, Naruto would be found by an Anbu officer who was doing a routine sweep of the village after most of the people had gone home. The red energy would no longer be visible or noticeable, and the only sign of injury the blonde would have would be several broken bones, the puncture wounds in his hands from the kunai, and a severe concussion. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Naruto's eyes opened as he found himself in what looked like a sewer. At least he thought it was a sewer. Gray, drab walls with cracks running along there, and there were pipes that glowed with a blue energy running every which way along the walls. Sitting up, Naruto realized he was in knee-deep water, yet despite this, he saw that his clothes and body were still completely dry. Getting up, Naruto looked around and tried to figure out where he was. It didn't look like any of the sewers he had ever seen before. And he had been in every sewer in Konoha during his attempts to escape from the drunken civilians that would occasionally chase after him. The young blonde's eyes found a pipe running along the ceiling that was different than the others, where all the pipes glowed blue. This one did not. Rather, it had a deep reddish glow. It was also the only one that was leading in a direction he could go. He decided to follow it. Eventually Naruto was forced to stop as he ended up staring at a large cage. It had odd black symbols that glowed with a purple energy along the bars. In the center of the cage was a piece of paper with some odd symbol he had never seen, but looked kind of like the stuff that the old man in the pointy hat would draw. He wondered if the old man had been down here and drew it. Hello. Naruto called out, hoping for an answer. For a second there was silence. Then Naruto heard it, a sound he had grown familiar with, as it had been one he had made countless times. Someone was crying. Following the sound, Naruto easily moved between the bars as he continued on towards the source. When he got to it, he was surprised. In front of him was a girl. She looked to be about 10 years older than he was. With long red hair that reached down to her mid-back and a pair of bangs that framed a beautiful, aristocratic face, with high cheekbones, luscious red lip, and a small nose. Her eyes were currently closed so he could not see the color, but she had rather long lashes that added to her beautiful features. She was wearing a red kimono that hid her rather beautiful figure, long toned legs, wide hips with a small, firm, shapely rear that fit her 5'8" height perfectly and tapered into a lithe waist before moving into a bust that fit her just as perfectly as everything else about her body did. All in all, the woman was too beautiful to be human, not that the little blonde had any real concept of beauty. 9 fox tails laid limply at her side, and 2 fox ears were flattened against her head. Currently she was curled up in the fetal position as tears rained down her face. For a moment Naruto was unsure what to do. He had learned long ago that he could not trust anyone except the old man with the funny hat. She could easily be trying to trick him into coming closer, however he also wanted to comfort the strange pretty girl. Having cried many times himself, he knew she must be hurting, and he could not stand to see others cry. He tentatively moved up to her side and knelt down. She hadn't seemed to notice him yet as her eyes were closed. "Ano, are you okay, miss?" he asked in a small timid voice. The young woman's eyes snapped open. Naruto saw that they were blood red, with the black slits running down the middle. They were some of the oddest eyes he had ever seen, and he had seen everything from white pupilless eyes that those blind people had to those creepy red eyes with the odd-looking dots in them. Even though these eyes were also red, they didn't scare him like the other red eyes did. The young woman gasped when she saw a pair of bright blue eyes in front of her and nearly fell backwards, or she would have had she been in an upright position. She had not expected to meet her container so soon, or ever if she were honest with herself. In fact, thanks to the seal that held her in place and had been draining her power, she had not even expected to wake up. Were it not for the seal that had been draining her power breaking, she likely would have never woken up. For the past 5 years she had only been partially aware of everything going on around her, enough to know that she had been sealed and have a general sense of time, but no more than that. Then not but 10 seconds ago she had awoken, only to be inundated with several images. Images of she was seeing through the boy's eye, images of him being tortured, by people accusing him of being her, of killing others, of hateful eyes and painful screams. The young blonde had been tortured so badly that his mind had been forced to bury itself deep enough within his subconscious to reach this place. The mere fact that the reason he was here because of her caused her even more tears to rain from her eyes. Out of some kind of instinct that she didn't know she had, the beautiful redhead grabbed Naruto, pulling his body to her in a hug as she buried her face in his hair. For a second Naruto's eyes widened and his entire body stiffened like a board as the young woman hugged him. Having never had a hug in his life except the occasional small one from the old man, he was unused to being so close, except when people were beating him. He was about to start struggling when the young woman spoke. "I'm sorry," despite her voice cracking, it was still extremely and beautiful and soft-sounding alto pitch. "I'm so sorry," she continued, "this is all my fault." Naruto's body began to relax as her voice reached his ears, the soothing and melodious sound comforting him in ways he had not felt before. He frowned as he tried to understand what was going on. Unable to think of anything, he decided to simply ask the girl who was now hugging, "Ano, why are you apologizing to me?" "Those people are hurting you because of me," the young woman replied to his question. "Because I was sealed inside of you, they feel that by hurting or killing you, it will hurt or kill me. This is all my fault." She began to shake as her tears spilled out harder. However, her body stiffened with surprise when a pair of small arms latched onto her waist. Naruto really had no clue what was going on, but this girl was apologizing to him for something that other people were doing. That simply wasn't right. "You don't need to apologize," Naruto said as he moved his head up to look at her. "You've never tried to hurt me or done anything mean to me. I don't see why you're saying sorry for something other people have done." The red-haired girl looked at the boy in shock. All of this was her fault. Had she been more prepared, she would not have been caught off guard and forced to attack Konoha. She would never have been sealed in this boy, and he would have never lost his family. She deserved nothing more than to receive this boy's hatred and the beatings he had taken from the villagers because of her. Yet this boy, this little 5-year-old boy, was telling her she had nothing to apologize for. Her grip tightened as she laid her head on his, whispering thank you over and over again to the little boy who was still confused. After a while Naruto decided it would probably be best if he knew what was going on. "Ano, if you don't mind my asking, miss. Where are we exactly? And who are you?" The woman blinked. "I'm sorry kid, I forgot you would have questions for me. Right now we are in your mind." She made a sweeping gesture to the area around her. "This place is called your mindscape. Think of it as a place inside of you that you can go to when you want to or are in trouble." Naruto only understood half of that. This place was some kind of safe haven that he could go to, but he really didn't understand what she meant by his mind. Could people go into their minds? Despite his confusion, he nodded anyway, figuring he would learn what she meant eventually. The young woman continued, "As for my name, it's Akane. However, you may know me better by my title of Kyuubi no Yoko." Naruto thought for a moment. He had heard the old man tell him about the Kyuubi before he was sure of it. He blinked as he recalled the information. "I thought the Kyuubi was an evil demon that the Yondaime killed. There's no way you can be a demon." "I am Kit," Kyuubi said sadly. "However, I am not evil. I was tricked into attacking your village." It was part of the truth at least, but the boy was not yet ready to hear of the dangers he may face since she was sealed in him. "As for the Yondaime, well, he did defeat me in a sense. He could not kill me. Demons of my caliber cannot be killed by mortals, so he did the next best thing by sealing me into a newborn baby." "Sealed?" asked Naruto, not really understanding what that means. "Yes, I am inside of you," Akane said. She wondered how best to describe the art of sealing, or at least how it pertained to their situation to a 5-year-old. She shook her head. There was nothing she could really say that would make sense to the boy. "All you need to know for now is that I am inside of you." Naruto tried to comprehend what she was saying. "So you're sealed inside of me?" Akane nodded, and the little blonde tried to grasp what that meant. If she was the Kyuubi as she was saying, and she was inside of him, then is the reason those villagers hurt me because they think I am you? He asked, that really the only thing he could think of. Why else would they want to hurt him unless they thought he was a demon who was somehow inside of him? The redhead bit her lower lip as she nodded. "Well, that's just stupid," Naruto said with a snort. "Wah. How can I be you if you're right here?" Naruto said, as if that explained everything. And in a very simplistic way it did. "Besides, you don't act bad," he added as an afterthought. After all, if she were the Kyuubi and the Kyuubi was supposed to be bad, he didn't think she would be crying and apologizing. Bad people don't do those things. A few tears came to Akane's eyes, but she blinked them away as she reburied her face in Naruto's hair, holding on to him like a lifeline. Naruto didn't resist this time as he was starting to get used to the hug, a part of him couldn't help but enjoy the feeling of warmth she gave off. For a while they stayed like that before Akane perked up. "Say kid," she said, getting Naruto's attention, "do you have any dreams you want to fulfill?" Naruto looked at her, tilting his head to the side in a cute fashion. Had Akane not already been pretty much cuddled up to the boy she would have, after seeing how cute he looked. A second later a foxy grin spread over his face. "Of course I have a dream, I'm gonna be the best Hokage ever." Akane looked at the young kid for a moment, the boy seemed so determined and full of energy when he said that. Like there was some kind of fire raging inside of those blue eyes of his, she smiled at him. "How would you like me to help you?" Naruto looked at her, his eyes wide as saucers. "You would help me?" "Of course," Akane said, "I will help you become Hokage. I will teach you everything I know about being a ninja and will even go one step further by turning you into a Hanyu." Naruto's face crunched up in confusion. "Hand what?" Akane giggled, "Not hand, Hanyu, I will let you become a half-demon to increase your power." Naruto thought about her offer for a moment, she was telling him he would become a half-demon. Was a half-demon like Akane? Well, if she was a demon, then he supposed that meant he would be half of what she was. In truth, the offer intrigued him rather than appalled him. He was already considered a demon by the village, so becoming a real one would not make a difference, at least that was how he perceived it. "Oh no, will I become like you?" he asked. Akane shook her head, "Not quite, I am a full demon, well you will become a half-demon. That's half-demon and half-human. I will give you all 9 of my tails, since I can regain my power easily enough if I ever get out of this seal. In any event, you will gain all 9 of my tails, which will mix with your human chakra to form a weaker variation of Yauki." Naruto did not quite understand what she meant by tails of power, nor did he know what chakra was, but put it into the learn later section of his mind. "Alright," Naruto said, "I would like your help in becoming the greatest Hokage ever." Akane giggled at his once again determined look. "Very well kid. Your training will begin soon. But first, you need to wake up." Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Naruto opened his eyes as he woke up in a bed he recognized as the one reserved for him at the hospital. "Are you alright, Naruto-kun?" Naruto blinked as he turned his head to look at the old man in the funny hat. "I'm fine, Ajusan. Did you save me?" Naruto asked. "I did," the old Hokage replied, not feeling the desire to worry the blonde by telling him he had been found unconscious by one of his Anbu. "I am sorry I could not get there sooner, I was in a council meeting. I suspect they did that on purpose so they could try to get rid of him," Sarutobi thought with a frown. If only he had more evidence of their wrongdoing, then he might actually be able to do something. If only they had not been able to monopolize as much power as they have, this would have never happened. Sometimes he cursed the Yondaime for dying. Had he not died, the bastards on the council would never have gained this much power. It was not that they had taken control of his power, but rather, thanks to the Yondaime's death, they had been able to gain enough power and clout over the village that they could cover up their tracks very well. "That's okay, Ajusan, it's not your fault people are bakas," Naruto said. Sarutobi looked at him strangely for a minute at the odd sentence. Well, the beating had only been severe enough to send him to the hospital a few times. He had never said something like that. Normally it would be marked off as the occasional odd words of a child. But Sarutobi was not the professor for nothing. Could he know of the Kyuubi? Sarutobi shook his head at the absurd thought. There was no way a child could know of that. He was probably just being paranoid. "Careful kid, you can't let him know that you know about me." Naruto blinked in surprise as the feminine voice of Akane rang through his mind. He looked around for a moment curiously. When he didn't see anyone other than the old man, he thought, Akane-chan. Akane flushed a little at the affectionate suffix, having never had someone call her that before. Of course, she had never given her true name to anyone before, so maybe that had something to do with it. She quickly shook the thought off and replied, "Yes, it's me kid, now don't let the Hokage know about me. If he did, no good could come of it right now." Naruto did not understand but agreed to anyways. He looked up at the old man who seemed to be in his own world. "Hey Ajusan?" Naruto asked. Sarutobi snapped out of his stupor. "Yes, Naruto-kun. Can I go now?" Sarutobi blinked before chuckling. No matter what happened, Naruto always hated hospitals and wanted to get out of them as soon as possible. "Of course your wounds are all healed, so you are free to leave." Naruto grinned as he stood up, getting the clothes laid out for him on as he left. Sarutobi watched the boy leave and closed his eyes. "I am so sorry I could not protect you more, Naruto." Chapter 2. Start of a New Life. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. "Kid, come on kid, it's time to wake up." Naruto groaned as he heard the voice in his mind. It sounded familiar and he really liked how it seemed to soothe him. But right now, he just wanted to sleep. 5 more minutes, Naruto grumbled as he buried his head under his pillow, as if that would somehow keep him from hearing the voice. Within his mind Akane was unsure whether she should snicker at how stupid that particular idea was, squeal kawaii because of how cute it was, or get angry and start yelling because Naruto was not listening to her. She settled for an odd mixture of the first two. "Come on, get up Naruto-kun," she called out after thinking about how adorable the child was and snickering at the thought that a pillow would block out her voice. It was a stupid idea since she was inside of him, after all. "Naruto-kun, you need to get up, we have a long day ahead of us." When her calls didn't work, Akane began to get angry and shouted, "Get your ass out of bed, Naruto." "GHH." Naruto shouted as he jumped right out of bed, or tried to before he got tangled in his sheets, fell off the bed, and landed on his head when he hit the floor. "Ow," he muttered, sitting up and rubbed the back of his head. He looked around and blinked before squinting his eyes. "I wonder who woke me up?" "That would be me," Akane snickered in his mind. "So it wasn't a dream?" Naruto thought as he rubbed his eyes tiredly. "No, it wasn't." "Oh." Akane snickered again. "Come on kid, get up and get some breakfast, your training begins today." "Training?" Naruto shouted as he jumped up in excitement. Unfortunately, he was still tangled up in his bed sheets and fell down again, where he began to squirm along the floor in an attempt to get himself free. "Ahahaha." Loud laughing came from his mind as Akane watched a boy struggle with his best sheets. "It's not funny," Naruto pouted as he finally got free. "It so is funny. Now get up and get some breakfast, you'll need your energy for your training." At the words training, all thoughts on his previous mishap was forgotten as Naruto raced out of his room and into the living room kitchen of his apartment. He had gotten this apartment from Ajusan a year ago after he had been kicked out and the old Hokage had found him huddled up in an alley using paper as a blanket. The apartment was, in a word, awful. The paint was chipped and faded, all of the furniture was used and beaten, the floors creaked, the windows were cracked, and on the outside walls near entrance were the words "Die Demon" painted in red. It had not always been like this, in fact the place had been fairly new when the Hokage had given it to him. But after several break-ins and raids the furniture and walls had been destroyed and Naruto had been forced to find items like microwaves in the dumpsters. Not that this bothered the little blonde anymore, it might have before, in fact just yesterday before the mob had come for him, he had been crying about how people kept ruining everything he got. But today was a new day, he had someone who promised to help him and that made everything seem insignificant in comparison. Naruto walked up to the pantry and grabbed a stool before opening it so that he could get to the top shelves where he hid his foodstuffs behind his rotten goods. He had learned a long time ago that people would raid his food if they found anything, so he had grabbed a lot of the rotten-smelling food, some of the only things that he could afford, thanks to all the extra money he had to pay, taxes the grocers called them. And hid some of the other things he could buy that was actually edible behind it. He pushed the cabbages and other nearly a year out-of-date food to the side to reveal his stock of food. Said stock consisted of ramen and more ramen, all of it in a variety of different flavors, though miso seemed to be the most prominent available. As Naruto began to cook his ramen, filling the cup with water and turning on the microwave for the 3 minutes it took to cook, Akane decided to voice her question. "Is that all you have?" she asked in shock. She had only gone through some of his life since she had woken up yesterday during his beating, not wanting to violate his privacy any more than she had to in order to gain a better understanding of his life. As such, she had not gone into things like if he was getting enough nutrients, and it hadn't seemed as important when he was getting beaten. "Yeah, why?" asked Naruto as he began to happily slurp up his ramen. "Oh, no reason, just curious," Akane replied lightly while trying to get a better grasp of the situation. "Naruto-kun, why do you have rotten, out-of-date food in your pantry?" "Because it was the only thing the stores would sell me," Naruto shrugged as he finished his ramen. He looked over at the pantry again, tempted to get another, but stopped himself. He didn't have much money and couldn't afford to buy more. "Something about taxation for letting demons like me live here. Those arrogant filthy monkeys." Akane raged mentally, cutting off her thoughts from her host as she began to pace within her cell. How could they do this to an innocent child? And they call me a demon. A part of her felt guilty since some of this was her fault, but she was determined to make amends for her mistake. More importantly, Naruto did not seem to hold a grudge on her, and that meant more to her than the young blonde would likely ever know. She shook her head as she came up with a plan of action. She would start training him first, then she would work on getting him something healthy to eat. "If you're finished eating, I want you to head out into the forest," she told her container. Why? Asked Naruto, not that he had a problem with the request, he loved the forest and the solitude it offered. He was just curious. "So I can begin your training away from prying eyes. If people discovered you getting stronger they may try to kill you." She didn't want to sound so harsh, but she needed to get her point across and there was no sense in beating around the bush. Naruto gulped. "KK, I'll head out right now." Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Soon, the young blonde found himself surrounded by trees as he walked through the forest around Konoha. He was not quite sure how far he had gone, but he knew it was likely farther than he had ever gone before. Within his mind Kyuubi was, with his permission, extending her senses out of the seal so she could ensure that no one was around. "Okay, I think this is far enough Naruto-kun," she said. "Now sit down and we'll begin your training." Naruto did as told, finding a nice tree to sit against. "So what am I going to be doing, Akane-chan?" "You will be learning the first and one of the most important steps for any ninja," she told him, "accessing your chakra." "What's chakra?" he asked, scratching his head in confusion. "Not katra, Naruto-kun, chakra," Kyuubi corrected. "Chakra a acute a tilde macroni chakra is essential to even the most basic jutsu mystical arts a ninja will utilize in battle. It is a mixture of the physical energy, s diaresis I acute umlaut u, shintai enrig plus, that is present in every cell of the body and the spiritual energy 3/4 diaresis I acute umlaut u seishin enrig plus, which is gained from exercise and experience. Once mixed, it can be channeled through the chakra circulatory system. Think of it as a system much like your bloodstream to any of the 361 chakra points called tenketsu in the body. Through various methods, the most common of which for you humans are hand seals, the chakra can then be manipulated to create an effect that would not be possible otherwise, such as walking on water, exhaling fire or creating illusions. By mixing different ratios of the two energies, new types of chakra can be formed. The most common product is elemental chakra, which is used to perform elemental jutsu. Most ninja have a natural affinity to one type of chakra, but they have the capacity to create elemental chakra, apart from their own affinity. There are 6 basic types, each stronger and weaker to another. 5 have been shown so far, but their relations, weaknesses and strengths to each other are all explored, the 6 dealing with yin and yang, and the balance of mental and physical energies. In addition to these 6 elements, certain Kekkei Genkai can mix elemental chakra to form new elements. For example, it would be possible to mix water and wind into ice. While many ninja can use more than one type of chakra, very few are able to use them simultaneously. Naruto listened to Akane's explanation of what chakra was. When she had finished, he scratched the back of his head, and were the red-haired woman out of the seal, she would have seen the look of dumb confusion on his face. "Right, so what is chakra again?" he asked in a sheepish voice. Akane's face faltered at his words. Pushing herself into a sitting position, she pinched the bridge of her nose. "You don't know what his chakra is, do you?" "No," Naruto said, his mental voice sounding like a sad whisper. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to let you down." Akane realized what was going on, that he was afraid she wouldn't continue training him, and quickly made out to rectify his thoughts. "Oh no, don't worry about it, I forgot that you're a little young to understand something that complex. You likely haven't even started the academy yet, huh?" Naruto shook his head. "Ajusen says that I can't start until I'm 6, that's next year." "Right, so it's not your fault you can't understand that," Akane frowned. How could she best to explain chakra to a 5-year? "Naruto-kun, what's your favorite food?" she asked as an idea came to her. "Ramen." His excited shout echoed throughout his mindscape. "Right, I should have figured that." Akane snickered a bit, with how it seemed to be the only thing he ate. It wasn't surprising. "Okay, think of it like this, chakra is an energy that people use to do superhuman feats. Now I want you to think of chakra as ramen." "Ramen." "Focus kid," Akane admonished lightly, getting an embarrassed chuckle out of the blonde. "Now your ramen is made of 2 things, the noodles and the broth." "What about the toppings?" asked Naruto, interrupting Akane's lecture. "The topics come later," she said, trying to keep his attention focused on her lecture. "Now don't interrupt me anymore. The noodles would be your physical energy, while the broth is your spiritual energy. By combining the 2 you get ramen in the same way that combining your physical and spiritual energy gets chakra. And by doing that I can do all those cool things I saw ninjas doing?" asked Naruto excitedly. "Like jumping really high and walking along walls." "It can do much more than that, Naruto-kun," Akane giggled, "but we'll get more into what you can do later. First, I need to teach you how to access your chakra." Oh, Naruto looked kind of disappointed for a moment, though it was gone a second later. "How do I access my chakra?" "First, I want you to sit in a cross-legged position with your back straight and pressed against a tree." Naruto blinked a few times at what he felt was an odd request, but did as told. "Now, close your eyes and bring your hands together." Her voice began to gain a hypnotic quality that made it impossible for Naruto to do anything but what she told him. "Make a cross using the middle and ring fingers. Now take deep, slow breaths and imagine a small ball of warmth in the pit of your stomach. When you feel it, let me know and describe what it is that you're feeling." Naruto did as told as he sat there, the ring and middle fingers of his hands forming a cross in front of him and his eyes closed. He tried to imagine the ball of warmth in his stomach, tried to feel it. However, after several hours with no success, Naruto gave a disappointed sigh. "I can't feel anything." Akane winced at the despondent tone in his voice and sought to reassure him, "Don't worry about it, Naruto-kun, it takes time for people to learn how to access their chakra. Just be patient and you'll get there." "Thanks Akane-chan," Naruto said, even though she couldn't see his face. Akane could almost feel the smile in his words, and it warmed her heart in ways she had not felt before. "You're welcome." Naruto's stomach erupted into a growl, interrupting the tender moment between student and teacher. I guess, I'm hungry," the blonde rubbed his stomach absently. Akane rolled her eyes but smiled as well. "I can hear a stream nearby, I want you to go there and catch some fish." "Why do you want me to do that?" asked Naruto, confused by the request. "So you can eat them of course," Akane replied absently, unable to see the horrified look on Naruto's face. But why would I want to eat a fish? They're alive." "Well, yes, they are," Akane blinked in confusion at the horrified tone in his voice. "But they won't be once you kill them." "Kill them?" Naruto shouted, his voice thundering across the mindscape, causing Akane to wince. "Why? Would you want me to kill some helpless animal?" "So you can eat them of course." "But I don't want to eat some helpless animal. That's really mean. I love animals." Akane actually blinked several minutes before snorting, and people thought this child was a demon. "Naruto-kun," she said as gently as possible, it wouldn't do for her to get upset at his odd morals, especially since he likely didn't understand. "This is the way the world works, it is natural. All animals are eaten by other animals. Insects eat grass and other plants, they in turn are eaten by lizards, fish and bats, while they in turn are eaten by larger animals. You are just doing as nature intended." "So it's not bad?" questioned the blonde. "No, it's not bad at all, in fact, without other animals eating the smaller ones the balance of the world become upset." It was an exaggeration, Naruto's eating of animals would have no bearing on the natural community. But it was better to tell a small eye so he would eat something healthy, rather than going to get some ramen back home. "Well I guess if it's natural then it's okay." "Yes, perfectly okay." Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. "Arg. You stupid fish." Naruto shouted as he tried to catch one of the many fish that were swimming in the stream he was standing in. So far he was having no luck, as the fish would seem to know what he was doing and just swim away from his hands. "Come here you little." He growled, trying to grab another fish. Splash. Only to slip on a particularly slippery rock and fall into the water, scaring off the fish he was near. "Arg. Why can't I catch any?" shouted Naruto in frustration. Akane watched a boy fail to catch anything with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. "Naruto-kun," she said as said blonde stood back up, grumbling a little about his clothes being soaked. "Close your eyes." "Why?" "Just do it," she said. "Okay." Naruto closed his eyes. "I want you to stay absolutely still." She once again modulated her voice into that hypnotic quality it had been when she had been helping him try to gain access to his chakra. "I want you to feel the current of the water, which way it's going and how fast it's moving. Then, try to feel the fish as they swim against the current." Naruto did as told, he was perfectly still as he felt the water moving around him in the direction he was facing. At least most of it was. He could feel small areas where it felt like the water was moving in the opposite direction. "Those are the fish," Akane informed the boy as to what those small movements were. "I want you to concentrate on the one that is swimming just to your left, feel its movements. On the count of 3, I want to swipe your hand across the water just in front of the direction that fish is moving. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Splash. Naruto opened his eyes as he felt his hand hit something and was just in time to see the fish he had been focusing on hit his hand and fly out of the water and onto the land over by his left. "Yada. I did it!" shouted Naruto excitedly. "Very good Naruto-kun," Akane congratulated, "now do that 3 more times and I think we'll be good." 3 more splashes later and Naruto was carrying 4 fish, using his shirt as a makeshift net. He walked some distance away and on Akane's orders, gathered a dozen medium-sized rocks and arranged them in a circle, then grabbed dry leaves and twigs and placed them in the center. "Okay, now place your finger in the center of the leaves." Naruto did as told and felt an odd warm sensation move up through his arm, then his finger. Suddenly the leaves and twigs ignited in a spark. Naruto jumped back in shock, "What the hell?" "Relax, kid," Kyuubi snickered a little bit. "I just started to fire for you." "You did that?" asked Naruto, his voice holding an odd tone to it. "Yes," Kyuubi sounded decidedly smug, though Naruto didn't even notice. "So cool, will I learn to do that?" "Maybe, it depends on your elemental affinity." "Elephant what?" "Elemental affinity, it's something you'll learn of when you're older." Oh, Naruto was tempted to ask Akane to teach him about elements now, but didn't want to upset the first person who really talked to him and thus kept his mouth shut. "Now, grab those larger stick I made you get and stick the fish on them so they can cook," Akane said. "After you finish eating we'll work on accessing your chakra again." Okay, Naruto replied. He was feeling a little queasy about cooking something that was alive at one point but didn't want to argue and thus did as he was told. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. By the end of the day a tired Naruto dragged himself back into his room. He had spent several more hours trying to access his chakra with no success. That had him feeling down, but Akane assured him it would likely be a month or so before he would be able to gain access to this power that would allow him to do awesome things. It made him feel a little better to know that she wasn't disappointed in him. He crawled onto the bed and into his covers, burying his head inside of his pillow. Who knew sitting around doing nothing more than searching for your inner energy could be so exhausting? Before he could go to sleep a thought crossed his mind, hey, Akane-chan. Yes. How do I get back to the place you're at? Akane's face gained a confused expression, why do you want to know? I was hoping to visit you, he said, a small, embarrassed blush on his face. Even though he seemed to forgive her for what she had done to him, Akane had not expected him to actually want to spend some time with her again. It was oddly comforting to know she was wrong. Well, to go back into your mind, all you have to do is close your eyes and think about coming back here. Okay, thanks. With that, Naruto went to sleep. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. He opened his eyes again. It wasn't to the sight of his cracked ceiling, but to the glowing pipes of the sewer that Akane had called his mind. He stood up and wondered how long he had been lying there. It must have been a long time since he didn't feel in the least bit tired. Shrugging the thoughts that he considered irrelevant off, he walked forward and made his way to the cage that housed Akane. Akane-chan. He called out as he stepped in through the bars. He looked around before hearing the sound of footsteps. Naruto-kun? Asked Akane curiously as she stepped forward and into the odd light that seemed to surround Naruto so he could see her. What are you doing here? She tilted her head, didn't you go to sleep already? I already did sleep, said Naruto, wondering what she was talking about. He didn't remember coming back here, but since he wasn't tired he had to have already slept right. Akane looked at him oddly for a second before realizing he likely didn't even know that he had just come into the seal immediately after asking his question. He probably didn't even realize that they were inside of his mind and most likely thought that he had teleported to some distant land. The thought was amusing enough to make her smile. So what are you doing here? She asked, sitting down and splaying her tails. Naruto hesitated for a moment before sitting down next to her. I was just wondering if you would tell me about yourself. About myself? You want to know about me? Asked Akane, surprised once again by this strange boy. Yeah, I mean, all I've ever heard about you was how you were this evil demon who attacked our village. Akane's shoulders slumped in depression at that, but Naruto's next words made her shocked. But that can't be right, I mean, you've been so nice to me, and you're smart and really pretty. He looked at her with those ridiculously large and innocent eyes. All the red-haired vixen could do was bite her lower lip to keep herself from blumping the boy. There's just no way you can be evil like everyone else says, he concluded. Damn, how this boy could make her, the most powerful bijuu on earth, tear up like this was beyond her. She tried to wipe them away before her young companion could notice, but was apparently not quick enough as Naruto saw the tears and his eyes widened and took them in the wrong context. Oh my god. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to make you cry. I'm really. His words were muffled when Akane covered his mouth with one of her hands. She smiled at him as she wiped her eyes with the other hand. These are tears of happiness, Naruto-kun, they're good tears, she reassured him. So I didn't make you sad? Asked Naruto. He really didn't want what might possibly be his first friend to get sad. No, you didn't make me sad, she said, scooping him into her arms. She set him down in her lap and pressed the back of his head into her bosom. Had he been anything other than an innocent child, the position would have likely sent him rocketing with geysers of blood shooting out of his nose. As it was, all Naruto could think of was how comfortable this position was as he snuggled himself deeper in between her breasts. Akane set her head on top of his and asked, what do you want to know? Everything, Naruto told her, I want to know everything about you. Akane giggled at the childish enthusiasm in his voice. Well, he was a child so it was to be expected. Very well, she said, I can't tell you everything there is to know about me, that would take several years, possibly decades. Naruto pouted and Akane giggled again, but I think I can tell you a story about some of my travels. What kind of story? Asked the excited blonde. Well, Akane smiled, why don't I tell you about a friend I had many, thousands of years ago named the Inu no Taisho and his 2 sons. Chapter 3. Beginnings of Power. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Naruto-kun came the sing-song voice of Akane. I'm up, Naruto grumbled out loud, his sleep-addled brain making him forget to speak within his mind. He sat up slowly and yawned, stretching his arms above his head while he smacked his lips to dry and moisten them. For a moment he just sat there, not doing anything until he got a small mental prod from Akane telling him to get up. Getting out of bed he began his daily routine. It had been a month since he had met Akane and started working on accessing his chakra, and since then the young Uzumaki had fallen into a routine of wake up, eat ramen, meditate in the forest, eat whatever he managed to catch, meditate again, eat some more, then go home and enter his mindscape, where he would talk to Akane until he fell asleep in her arms. Well, the training was good. That last part of the day was the best, as far as he was concerned. So what are we doing today? Asked Naruto as he began slurping up his morning ramen. He had just managed to gain access to his chakra yesterday, which had been really exciting for the blonde and had him jumping up and down for the rest of the afternoon. It had taken Akane nearly 3 hours to get him to calm down, not that she was much better, as she had been just as excited for the blonde. Today will begin the next stage of your training, Akane told him, go to our usual spot in the forest and we'll get started. Asu. When Naruto finished with his meal, he tossed the empty cup and used chopsticks into an overflowing trash can. Akane made a mental note to make him clean his house when he got home as the blonde stepped out and closed the door behind him. He took off without locking it. There was no need since he had nothing of value anymore, and it wasn't like it ever stopped people from breaking in anyways. He ran down the street, completely ignoring the scowls and angered glares that were sent his way. Now that he had someone who cared about him, the glares sent to him by the villagers were less than meaningless. Soon enough Naruto was running through the trees and stopped in the clearing he had been using. Okay, so what now? Now we'll begin the second step, molding and controlling your chakra, Akane commented as Naruto sat down in his usual spot as he listened to the demoness talk. Molding chakra involves the extraction of energies from both the body's cells and the mind's consciousness, then mixing them together within the individual. The amount of each energy will differ based on the type of technique the ninja wishes to execute. In other words, a ninja could create too much or too little chakra for a given jutsu, resulting in the chakra being used inefficiently. In addition, even if a ninja is able to mold the correct amount of chakra, if they cannot manipulate the chakra properly, the desired jutsu will not be as effective or will not execute at all. Wasting energy will also create weaknesses like early exhaustion, which would hinder the ninja's capacity to fight long-term battles. General training methods for improving one's molding and manipulation of chakra are the leaf concentration, tree climbing, and water walking exercises, at least for humans. Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly, Right, Akane sighed, needs to be simpler. Okay. She clapped her hands together, why don't we just start with a chakra control exercise and I'll go into more detail behind the mechanics and theories of chakra later. Naruto-kun, I want you to grab a leaf and stick it onto your forehead, channel your chakra to your head to hold the leaf there. Naruto didn't even question her as he picked up a leaf from the ground and put it to his head. He began channeling chakra to that spot, then removed his hand. He was rather surprised when instead of sticking to him, the leaf shot off his head, completely torn to shreds. What happened? He asked. You used too much chakra, Akane told him, if you use too much chakra the leaf will shoot off, too little and it won't stick. Of course he has so much it actually ripped the leaf to pieces. This is going to take some effort. She didn't mention that out loud as she continued. You need to find the correct amount of chakra to use in order to make the leaf stick. Okay, I think I understand, Naruto said. He grabbed another leaf and got to work. Sticking a leaf to his forehead proved to be a lot harder than it sounded. Usually he found it flying off his forehead with enough force that the leaf would actually get torn. It took the entirety of his 3-hour period before lunch to make any progress at all, progress being that now his leaf only flew about a foot away, rather than getting torn to shred from the force of getting shot off his head. It was a little disappointing that he couldn't complete the exercise by the time he finished, but Akane didn't let him wallow in what he deemed as a failure. That was an excellent job, Naruto-kun, she said to him. This exercise is actually harder for you than most because you have so much more chakra than most people. The fact that you're starting at such a young age is also a factor to consider. So because I have more chakra, it's harder to control? Asked Naruto as he ate the fish he had caught along with some of the wild berries that Akane had told him were edible. Yes, the more chakra you have the more difficult it is to control it, she paused. I believe that's why humans start teaching children to mold chakra at a young age. Demons do the same thing with their young, especially considering Yaki is harder to control than chakra. Why is that? Because Yaki is many times more potent and powerful than its human equivalent. Yaki from even the weakest demon is about 3 times more powerful than chakra. What about you? How much stronger is your Yaki? Akane smiled as she answered, oh, about 100 times more powerful. Naruto's eyes widened, you must be really strong. Of course, Akane said, and Naruto got a mental image of the redhead flipping her hair over her shoulder and smirking. I am the most powerful bijuu in existence after all. Now, finish eating so we can get started on your training. Naruto nodded, even though Akane could not see it, and scarfed down the rest of his food before standing up. So am I going to be doing the leaf sticking exercise again? He asked. No, you're going to be training your body now, Akane said. Another key to gaining strength is your physical prowess, so I want you to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 pull-ups, 200 crunches, and then you're going to run around the forest at full speed until I say stop. Naruto's eyes widened to epic proportion as she told him what he would be doing, wide-eyed. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Wide-eyed. The scream echoed all throughout Konoha, causing many people to pause and shiver at the fear and at the sheer terror the voice held. Sarutobi had stopped reading his beloved Icha Icha Paradise and looked out of the window as the shout came, he shivered. Why do I have this feeling that someone close to me is being tortured? Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Don't complain Naruto-kun, Akane admonished as Naruto began blubbering about the exercises being too much. If you want to be strong, you need to do as I say. But fine, the young blonde child's shoulders seemed to drop. Now, don't be all down, this really will help you, the red-haired vixen told her charge, I just want you to reach your goals. I know thank you Akane-chan. You're welcome. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Naruto's new training regimen soon began, every morning after breakfast he would begin practicing chakra control exercises. It took nearly a month for him to accomplish the leaf concentration exercise, or sticking a leaf to your forehead. When that was accomplished Akane had him move on. The next step was tree climbing, this step was a lot harder than leaf concentration. It required him to channel chakra to the bottom of his feet and walk up the surface of a tree, too much and he was blasted off, and too little he would fall off. It didn't sound that hard in theory, but in practice it was much more difficult. The thing about tree climbing was that it wasn't just about channeling the correct amount of chakra to his feet, it required more than just that, every time he wanted to take a step, he actually had to cut the chakra to that foot, otherwise, it would simply stay stuck to the tree when he tried to pull it off. This meant Naruto had to not only find the correct amount of chakra to channel, but had to time when he would dispel the chakra on his feet to move up or down the tree. Akane had him accomplish this by laying on his back and pressing his feet against the side of a tree, he would then channel his chakra and attempted to walk up slowly. She would do what she could to coach him, giving helpful tips like telling him to clear your mind and focus only on the feel of his chakra and climbing up the tree, as well as giving him encouragement. Like his other exercise, this one required had taken a month for him to accomplish. Now he was attempting to walk on water. If he had thought tree climbing was hard, then this was just ridiculous. To do this exercise, the user had to be emitting a constant stream of chakra from the bottom of their feet and using the repellent force, walk across the water's surface. This technique was far more difficult to master than the tree climbing exercise because the amount of chakra that needed to be emitted changed constantly, meaning he had to monitor the amount he was expelling all the time. Splash. Wahh. Keep trying kid. Akane said, snickering at her container's plight as he fell in for the 6th time this day. Yuri hate this so much, Naruto said as he climbed out of the water, shivering as a wind blew across his cold wet skin. He stood there for nearly a minute, shivering before he decided to try again. Okay, let's do this again. The young blonde began channeling chakra to the bottom of his feet, placing his left foot on the water he leaned on, his foot dipped a little, but he quickly expelled more chakra to compensate. When he felt ready he placed his other foot on the water, he shook a little as his feet kept dipping in and out of the moving, liquid surface, and he did his best to keep himself from falling. When he was ready, he began to move 1 step, 2 steps, 3, 4. Hey. Naruto smiled, I think I'm getting the hang of this. Splash. Wah. Mahahahaha. Akane began laughing hysterically as the blonde once again fell in. Were anyone else inside the seal they would have seen the crimson-haired demoness rolling around on the floor laughing as she held her gut and with tears of mirth streaming down her face. Who knew watching Naruto train would be so entertaining? It's not funny. Naruto scowled as he climbed back out. It is too funny. Akane shot back even as she tried to regain her breath from all the laughing she did, I only wish I could see the look on your face, hahaha. Why is this so hard? Asked Naruto in a complaining whine. Well, you can't expect it to be easy, Akane quipped as she got her laughing under control. This is the hardest exercise humans have, at least I think it is, I'm pretty sure they don't go into any of the other exercises. So you can't expect to just get it right away. But it's been 2 months. Naruto whined, the others only took me 1 month. Which just goes to show you that this exercise is much harder than the other ones, Akane said. Now, let me dry you off then you can go and get some food. Naruto felt his entire body relax as Kyuubi's yaki entered his system, his skin began to heat and steam, drying off as the natural heat from the vixen's yaki warmed it. I love the feel of your yaki, Naruto said with a content sigh, his eyes were closed so he could not see the light red haze of Akane's yaki as it flooded through his coils and made its way out of the pores of his skin. It feels almost as good as when you hold me. What? Asked Akane, blushing at his innocent words. He had been making innocent statements like that ever since they met, for some reason they never failed to make her entire face feel like it was on fire. She was confused as to why those words from Naruto always seemed to affect her so, no matter how hard she thought about it, she had been unable to find the answer. Maybe her biological clock was finally ticking. She just hoped Nibi never found out, or that damn Hellcat would never let her hear the end of it. She shook her head, now wasn't the time to figure out what it was about this boy that affected her so. Go and catch something to eat, Naruto-kun, afterwards begin your physical training. Yes, Akane-chan. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Sarutobi slowly blew smoke from his pipe as he looked out at the village. The paperwork was done, his secretary had none left to bring him, he had no ninja bothering, and the council had been quiet since Naruto's birthday. Days like this, where he could just relax, were rare, and he was taking full advantage of that fact by smoking his favorite pipe. Ah. This is the life. Just as he had those thoughts, the door slammed open and in walked Naruto Uzumaki, yelling out in a loud voice, "Oh Ajisan. Looks like he spoke too soon." "Ah, Naruto-kun," Sarutobi smiled, even if the boy had ruined the peace and quiet he had been enjoying, the young blonde always brought a smile to his face. "What can I do for you? You do know that it's not time for me to take you out to ramen for another 2 days, right?" Ever since Sarutobi had found the little blonde on his own, hiding from the weather under several sheets of newspaper in an alley, he had taken it upon himself to ensure Naruto got at least one good meal when he could. Sarutobi often wished he could do more for the young bundle of energy, but unfortunately his job as Hokage often kept him too busy to do more than spend once a month with Naruto. Shaking the thoughts off, he focused his attention on said blonde. "That's okay," Naruto said as he sat down on the chair in front of the Hokage's desk, swinging his legs back and forth in a childish manner as they couldn't reach the floor. "I'm actually here to ask for something else." "Oh?" Sarutobi raised an eyebrow in mild curiosity. "And what do you need from me?" "Well," Naruto gave a sheepish grin and scratched the back of his head, "I was wondering if I could use your library to look up cool ninja techniques." "Ninja techniques?" Sarutobi looked both startled and amused. "Naruto-kun, you don't start the academy for another 8 months, you'll learn all the ninja techniques then." I know, but I wanted to get a head start," said Naruto, "that way I can show everyone how awesome I am." Sarutobi chuckled a bit, the boy was enthusiastic at least. "I apologize, Naruto-kun, but the Hokage library is restricted to only myself and those ninja who have my permission to enter. You are not a ninja, so there isn't much I could do." "I can't even take a peek?" asked Naruto, with wide, innocent eyes that threatened to break Sarutobi's will. "I'm sorry," Sarutobi said, doing his best not to look into the blonde's eyes. "But it wouldn't be fair to the other students. However, if you really wish to get a head start, you could always check out some of the books they have at the library. I believe they have a few books on ninja basics there." "They won't let me enter," Naruto whispered in a hurt tone. It sounded like someone had kicked his puppy and was enough to make Sarutobi flinch. When the blonde looked again, they were all watery and had tears leaking out of the corner of his eyes. "The lady there kicked me out before I could even enter. She said demons don't deserve to learn." Sarutobi felt his will crumble, even as his anger at hearing what someone told the young blonde skyrocketed. How could anyone say something like that to a child? Didn't they know how impressionable young children were at Naruto's age? If you tell a child he's a demon enough times, then he may believe, and if that happened, Naruto would become the very thing this village despised and feared. It would be a self-fulfilling prophecy. "I suppose it would be alright if I let you take a look," Sarutobi admitted slowly. "At least until I have a talk with the librarian." The way he said talk made it clear that he would be doing anything but talking. He stood up from his chair and walked around the table, holding his hand out to Naruto, who took it immediately. They walked out of the office and Sarutobi stopped to look at his secretary. "I want you to contact Ibiki, tell him he's to be at my office in 1 hour. "Yes, Hokage-sama," the young brunette said. Sarutobi had hired her for the simple fact that she was one of the few people who did not seem to hate Naruto, or at the very least, she hid it well and didn't let it interfere with her work. "Come along, Naruto-kun," Sarutobi said as they began walking down the hall. That was some very nice acting back there," Akane said, impressed with how well he managed to create tears on cue. "You even had me fooled for a second." "Thanks, Akane-chan," Naruto said cheerfully, "I aim to please." He and Sarutobi reached the end of the hall and went down several flights of stairs, through another hall, and stopped in front of a set of large double doors. Sarutobi placed his hand on a seal on the left door and began channeling his chakra into the seal. It glowed a light blue for a moment before there was a soft click and the door opened. Saruto led Naruto through the door and into the room. The Hokage library was not that large, not compared to the public library. That was because the Hokage library contained strictly ninja techniques, whereas the public one had a section for just about everything. Still, it was very large, with nearly 24 rows of shelves filled with books and scrolls, 2 floors, several chairs and a table for reading. Now Naruto, Sarutobi started in a serious voice. There are a few stipulations to me letting you stay here. First, you can only read from the basic shinobi section, section 1. Weasel will be making sure that you do not read any of the scrolls and books in the other sections. Who's Weasel? Asked Naruto, tilting his head in curiosity. That would be me, said a voice behind Naruto. Ah. Naruto whirled around and found himself staring into someone wearing the traditional Anbu uniform, which consisted of black and grey armor, metal arm guards and gloves, ninja sandals with spikes for traveling into mountainous regions, 3 ninja pouches on his back waist, and a signature spiral tattoo on his left shoulder. He had a porcelain mask in the likeness of a weasel and a standard black ninja too strapped to his back. I apologize, I did not mean to startle you, the masked ninja, who could only be Weasel stated. It was hard to tell with the mask muffling the voice and said voice being slightly monotone, but he sounded amused. Naruto huffed as he crossed his arms and gave the weasel mask Anbu a petulant glare, just don't do it again. Sarutobi chuckled and ruffled Naruto hair, now then, Weasel will make sure that you only read what I allow you. Also, be careful not to damage any of the scrolls you handle, most of these are originals and therefore delicate. I am putting a lot of trust in you Naruto-kun, don't let me down. Don't you worry about a thing Ajisen. Naruto grinned as he gave a thumbs up, unknowingly giving the nice guy pose. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Yosh. My youth detector has gone off. Shouted a man with a bowl cut, large eyebrows and the most hideous green leotard-like spandex anyone had ever laid eyes on. Everyone around this man suddenly jumped in startlement as he enthusiastically pumped a fist in the air. Whoever this youthful person is has inspired me. I must fan my own flames of youth by challenging my hip, eternal rival Kakashi. But that said the man took off, leaving nothing but a cloud of dust in his likeness behind. The people who watched him shivered in fear as a shout of "Youth" could be heard in the distance. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Over at a memorial that was made to honor those of Konoha who died in battle and won the many training grounds of Konoha, Kakashi Haddock shivered. Why do I have this intense urge to kill spiky-headed blondes? Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Sarutobi grimaced as he saw the pose Naruto had taken. He hoped that Mido Guy never got his hands on the impressionable child. The horrors that would come of such a meeting were too terrible to imagine. Then I will leave you to it, meanwhile, I am going to go speak with a subordinate of mine and have him talk to the librarian you were telling me about. He did his best to shake thoughts of a Naruto wearing green spandex with a bowl-shaped haircut and large eyebrows out of his mind. Okay. I'll just get started on learning awesome ninja powers, the next time you see me I'll be ready to take that hat. Naruto shouted enthusiastically. Sarutobi chuckled, I'm sure you will. He said, not too concerned, after all, how much could a child like Naruto really learn in the few days it would take for him to straighten out the library? He nodded to Weasel who nodded back and left. Bacane sighed, not quite what I had hoped, but at least he gave you access to the library, we should be able to learn more about ninja techniques than we can at the academy, even with the restrictions. Naruto-kun, go grab a book on shinobi basics. Asu. Naruto ran to the section Sarutobi had pointed out and immediately began scanning the titles of the books and scrolls in that particular area. It was only then that Naruto realized they had another problem. Kane-chan. Yes. I can't. The Kane blinked curiously as Naruto's voice was too soft for her to hear, like a whisper across the mindscape. What it is Naruto-kun? She asked. I can't read he mumbled, feeling ashamed of himself. What? I can't read. But didn't she stop herself from speaking any further and nearly kicked herself, of course, that hateful bitch of a matron that had kicked him out of the orphanage hadn't taught him how to read. Why she even thought that he might be able to despite this was beyond her, she knew that everyone hated Naruto enough that they would do all in their power to block him from learning. Knowledge is power after all, and they wouldn't want the demon to gain any of that. Ayubi felt a growl escape her throat as the desire to tear out the matron's throat nearly overwhelmed her. But she forced the emotion into the back of her mind, it wouldn't help right now. She needed to help Naruto. Naruto-kun, she said softly, interrupting the boy who had begun to softly cry at his lack of ability. I want you to allow me to take control of your body, I can memorize all of the scrolls here and manifest them in the mindscape, then I'll teach you to read. Okay. Okay, Naruto sniffed as he wiped his eyes, thank you. Don't mention it. Kane smiled before she exerted her will through the seal, without Naruto's express permission what she was about to do would be impossible. The seal that held her was stronger than any she had ever seen, held together by the powers of the Shinigami, the Avatar of Death himself. Even with Naruto's permission this would be a tad difficult without alerting the Anbu to any change in Naruto's chakra. Slowly, she seeped her chakra through the seal and established hold of Naruto's own chakra, exerting more will over it to bring it under her control. Naruto, whose head had been bowed down, lifted it up to reveal red eyes with black slits. Grabbing the first scroll she saw, Kane began to read over it. Thanks to what she could do things like read a lot faster than any human could, and she had eidetic memory, so she never forgot what she read. Going through the first book as quickly as possible, she soon went on to the next. All the books she read only had the standard information in them: what a ninja was, basic skills in stealth, tracking, tai, nin, and jinjutsu, chakra enhanced seals, along with many other subjects that academy students were expected to know. There were a few jutsu that she got, but they were fairly weak and wouldn't be as useful as what she had hoped to find. Other books held content she already knew herself, like chakra. She had more knowledge on that subject than any scroll a human could write ever would. But others she didn't know and was quick to absorb the contents of those scrolls for later use. She didn't get as much as she had hoped out of the scrolls, but it was better than nothing. Over by the door, Weasel watched as Naruto ran through the books faster than an Akamichi ate food with an amused chuckle. The kid was definitely interesting, though what he hoped to accomplish by looking through a bunch of books without reading their contents was beyond him. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Later that night, Naruto was back in Akane's laps within the seal. She had secured her hands firmly around his waist as she pulled him to her and set her hands on his lap. "Okay, Naruto-kun." Akane held out her hands and materialized a book within them. This one was not one of the ninja books, but a basic book with the human alphabet and some words and sentences on it. It was a book that held a compendium of knowledge that Akane had on the human language and would be what she used to teach the young blonde how to read with. "We're going to start by learning the alphabet. Now, Japanese is an agglutinative language and a more timed language. It has a relatively small sound inventory and a lexically significant pitch accent system. It is distinguished by a complex system of honorifics with verb forms and particular vocabulary to indicate the relative status of the speaker, the listener, and persons mentioned in conversation. Japanese vowels are pure." Noticing the look on Naruto's face that let Akane know he had no clue what she was talking about, she decided to go a different route. "Why don't we start with the alphabet?" Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. The days wore on and became weeks, and the weeks became months as Akane continued helping Naruto. Teaching him to read was not all that hard, he could already talk, so it was easier than teaching someone who was younger than him. All in all, it only took 2 weeks within the seal before the young blonde was capable of reading fluently. Afterwards, Akane had Naruto add in learning one of the jutsu she had found in the Hokage library with his normal routine. Sometimes it would take only a day to learn one of the jutsu, and sometimes it would take a month. However, he learned all the ones that she had to offer. All except one. "Arg!" shouted Naruto as he looked at his half-dead clone. He couldn't understand it. Why could he learn every other jutsu, yet this one technique was giving him problems? "You stupid bunshin. Work, damn you." He tried to make the clone jutsu again and again and again, but no matter how many times he tried, he always ended up with the same half-dead clone. "Why can't I do this?" "Because you have too much chakra," supplied Akane, who had been watching in amusement for a while before deciding to take pity on him. "What? Too much chakra?" asked Naruto in a confused voice. "Yep, remember what I told you about the more chakra you have being harder to control?" "Yeah, you said that when someone had more chakra it was harder for them to use, and if they didn't have enough control they would. That's it. I was overloading the jutsu, even using the smallest amount of chakra I possess is still used too much for this technique." "Excellent, Naruto-kun," Kyuubi said, pleased to find that her host was finally retaining and even using the knowledge she had given him. "Yes, you're overloading this jutsu. The problem is, even if you have perfect chakra control, there is no way for you to learn this particular technique, since the lowest amount of chakra you can emit would still be too much for you to handle." "So what I do?" asked Naruto, still feeling a little frustrated. "I don't want to just give up." "And you won't," Kyuubi assured him. "We just need to find another technique that's similar to this one, something that allows to the same thing, maybe something even better than this technique. After all, this clone is just an illusion, so you can't do much with it." "That would be awesome, but how are we going to find a jutsu that could replace the bunshin?" asked Naruto. "Ajusan won't let me into the Hokage library now that I can go into the public one, and I already read all of the books you memorized." "We'll think of something," Kyuubi said, confident that something would come up to help them with this problem. Something always came up sooner or later, all they would need was patience. "Why don't you head home now?" she suggested. "I suppose that would be for the best." Naruto channeled chakra into his legs and was soon hopping through the trees, making it out of the forest in only half an hour, despite the 10-mile difference. "Naruto-kun," Kyuubi said as Naruto was walking through the now abandoned streets of Konoha, "someone is following you." Naruto stopped and stiffened, prepared to run if someone was attempting to kill again. So far he had been able to outrun and hide from any and all the mobs that might have formed recently, since no one would expect him to know tree climbing, and he was sure he could outrun whoever was following him. But he didn't really want to run, he had been doing that all his short life, and he was sick of it. Whoever is stalking me, I suggest you show yourself before I shove my foot off in your ass. Naruto shouted. The Kane's sweat dropped. Did you seriously just say something that stupid, really Naruto-kun? The kid may be getting better but whoever this person was using chakra, she could feel it, and that meant he was ninja. Naruto stood no chance against a ninja right now. Naruto ignored her in favor of the figure who had just jumped down from building. He had dark gray eyes, black hair that hung near his cheeks to frame his face, and kept the rest of it in a ponytail at the back. His clothes consisted of a black shirt with a high collar that somewhat covered the lower half of his face, it had a large red fan on the back, and black pants with a weapons pouch strapped to his back. The fact that this man had jumped from the roof told Naruto that he was a shinobi, making the blonde tense. He knew that he wouldn't stand a chance against a ninja. The whiskered blonde was now cursing himself for being so stupid. He had only just started his training a little while ago, and he was only 5 going on 6 years old. He had no chance in hell of defeating a trained ninja. Maybe he should have listened to a cane after all. Who the hell are you and what do you want? Asked Naruto with false bravado, preparing to run in case things got bad. I mean you no harm Naruto-san, the man said, and the 5-year-old blonde blinked as he recognized the voice. Weasel-san? Asked Naruto uncertainly. I'm pleased to see you remember me, Weasel said, giving the blonde a small smile. It looked decidedly odd considering his voice had somewhat of a monotone. However, my real name is Itachi, so you may call me that when I am not on duty. Itachi. Naruto tried to the name out before shrugging. So, what exactly do you want with me Itachi-san? Why are you following me? I was just heading home after a mission and saw you coming out of the forest, Itachi said. I guess I became curious and followed you, again I apologize for startling you. Naruto slowly relaxed. After his last beating, he could tell when people wanted to harm him, in large part due to a cane pumping his eyes and nose with her yaki. The results of which gave him increased vision that allowed him to see in the dark and made his nose nearly 10 times stronger than an Inuzuka's. He could literally sense the pheromones on people, and a cane had taught him to recognize them and what they meant. For the most part, there were some things she hadn't taught him yet, like that henny smell he had caught wind of when he passed a house where odd-sounding shouts were coming from. When he asked her about that she had just said I'll tell you when you're older and left his curiosity unsatisfied. In that case, is there something I can help you with? Asked Naruto, feeling better now that he could tell this man meant him no harm. Itachi shook his head. I was just heading back to my own home when I saw you and decided to make sure you got home safely. Naruto blinked for a few seconds before shrugging, well okay, thanks I guess. You are welcome Naruto-san, Itachi said. Naruto looked at him for a few more seconds before he began his walk back to his apartment. Itachi watched as the young child of the 2 people he had respected the most in this world walked off, a thoughtful frown on his face. That whole conversation had been both surprising and interesting. Surprising because Naruto had been able to actually sense him, despite the fact that Itachi was one of the few Anbu whose stealth skills were good enough that only the best Inuzuka trackers or a Hyuga could find him. He hadn't been hiding or anything, but the fact that the blonde had good enough senses to find him was still impressive. And it was interesting because of how the young blonde had reacted when he showed himself. The way Naruto had tensed his muscles, a sign that he had been coiled and ready to act if Itachi had shown any sign of attacking. It was both depressing and impressive. Depressing that a young child and the hero of Konoha had gained self-preservation abilities like that. Yet impressive as well, since while it was disheartening it showed just how powerful the young boy could become if he could get proper training that is. He might already be getting training from somewhere, Itachi mused, he was consciously channeling chakra into his legs. That he can access his chakra at such a young age. Itachi would have to watch Naruto more closely, maybe he would find some way to help him. He owed it to the boy's parents after all. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Naruto-kun, come into the seal, I want to speak with you for a second, a cane said as Naruto finished his after-exercise stretches. Sure thing, Naruto said, shrugging off the odd request since she could talk to him without him entering the mindscape. Not that he would ever complain about being near the one person who had helped him more than the Hokage. He sat down under one of the trees and closed his eyes. He pictured himself entering the mindscape and willed it to happen. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Opening his eyes again, Naruto found himself standing just outside of the cage that held a cane. He looked at it for a moment with frown before moving through the bars and walked over to where the redhead was sitting. Akane-chan, he greeted as he sat down next to her. Akane smiled at him, Naruto-kun, now that you are going to be starting the academy in a few months we need to talk about your persona. By what? Naruto asked, blinking in confusion. What was she talking about? Your persona, how you act in public, she said, I've been thinking about it for a while now. With how the population of Konoha sees you, we need to hide your abilities and make sure they don't think you're a threat. You mock, that makes sense actually, Naruto thought about what the red-haired demoness was telling him. "So, how do you think I should act?" he asked, because honestly he had no real talent in subterfuge. The Kane smiled, "Well, I was thinking of the best way to make you seem harmless, as well as get back at a few of the villagers." Chapter 4. Academy Days PT. 1. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. It was early in the morning, the sun was rising, painting the sky in beautiful reds, yellows and oranges, and the people of Konoha were currently gaping as members of the Uchiha police force were busy running around Konoha, trying to pick up their undergarments, all of which had been hung around the many buildings of Konoha and dyed bright pink. The sight of the Uchiha police force, one of the most powerful clans in Konoha, picking up bright pink underwear that had been hung from the buildings, their faces burning with shame and anger, was a sight that shocked all those who were watching. Many of the people, including the Red Eyes themselves, wondered who had the audacity to do this to one of the most powerful clans and the people in charge of the police force. Unbeknownst to all of them, 6-year-old Naruto Uzumaki was watching the scene unfold from a nearby building, hidden under a camouflage sheet and snickering. "What do you think of my latest exploit, Akane-chan?" "I must admit I'm impressed," Akane said, laughing within his mind. "I've always hated that clan, they're so arrogant." That, and she hated the way they treated Naruto. With his permission she had watched more of his memories. The Uchiha clan had been one of his biggest detractors, and a lot of the abuse he had taken from the ninja forces had been Uchiha. That had been more than enough to put them onto her shit list. Of course, there were more reasons she hated them, but she wasn't going to say anything about that to Naruto until she felt he was ready for that kind of information. Naruto smiled as he moved into a crouching position and jumped off the roof and into an alley. He threw off his camouflage and hid it in one of the many hidey holes he had created within the village. Walking out of the alley he bumped into one of the many Uchiha running around, collecting underwear. "You!" the Uchiha shouted, gathering the attention of everyone else there as he pointed at Naruto. "I bet this is your doing, you little deep rat. I'm gonna make you suffer." "And so the chase begins," Naruto thought as he laughed out loud and shouted, "Then you're going to have to catch me." With that he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small self-made smoke bomb that he threw on the ground, covering the entire area in smoke. Cough cough, where did he go? "I don't know. I can't find him in this stupid smoke. Damn him. When I get my hands on that brat." The smoke soon cleared and the group of Uchiha looked around, spotting Naruto as he turned a corner. They soon ran after him and Naruto laughed as he began giving them a merry chase around the village. Having memorized every single side street, back alley and sewer tunnel, Naruto knew more ways around Konoha than anyone else and had no compunctions against using them to lead the Uchiha clan by the nose. Looking behind him he saw the Red Eyes chasing after him, their Sharingan active as they tried to use it to track him down. He grinned, turning his attention back to what was in front of him and quickly turned another corner. Several trash cans were standing off to the side and Naruto pulled out a small red stick with a wick on it. He felt a Kane channeling Haryuki through his finger and grinned as the wick sparked and lit. He tossed the stick into one of the trash cans and turned another corner. Just then the Uchiha had turned the corner he had previously turned a few seconds ago and the trash cans exploded, sending food, gunk and other kinds of garbage flying all over the red-eyed clan members who had all been blown off their feet. Naruto cackled as he continued to run. He turned another corner and found more Uchiha that had stopped collecting their underwear at the sound of the explosion. They quickly spotted him and their faces turned to anger. "Look there. It's him. The demon. Get him." Running some more, the blonde-haired troublemaker took several twists and turns as he pumped chakra through his legs to increase his speed. He pulled out more smoke bombs, along with some tear gas he had made from onions, garlic, and piss from the Inuzuka's dogs. He let them drop behind him and grinned when they exploded into the chasing ninja, causing them all to stop and cough as their lungs, eyes and nose burned with the terrible mixture of liquids. Naruto rounded another corner and into an alley before jumping on the roof. Going through several hand seals he disappeared in a puff of smoke, using the henge or transformation technique to transform into a young chunin with brown hair and steel gray eyes. After which he began moving away from the parts of Konoha that had the Uchiha's dyed underwear. "You know, pranking the Red Eyes is starting to get kind of boring. Do you think I should start finding other targets?" asked Naruto. Akane tapped her chin and thought, "It may prove useful to prank others. Maybe you should begin pranking a clan like the Inuzukas or the Hyugas so that you can practice hiding from people who are good trackers." It was unknown to everyone but Naruto and his inner demoness, but the blonde didn't just use his pranks as a means of revenge. They actually had a three-part purpose, the first being to get back at those who had and still do wrong him. The second was to train in his stealth, evasion and espionage skills. And the third was to give himself the persona as a prankster and attention seeker, thus ensuring no one took him seriously and thought of him as a threat. So far, it had worked perfectly. Of course, just because you're going to select other targets doesn't mean you should stop pranking the arrogant bastards. We both know I would never stop pranking the arrogant pricks, Naruto grinned as he stopped building hopping. He looked around, seeing no one in sight, and figuring he was far enough from the most heavily populated centers of the village he dropped the hinge, reverting back into his blonde-haired, blue-eyed form. He dropped down from the roof and began to casually walk through the section of the village he was in. They need someone like me to ensure that their heads don't get so big they no longer fit through a door. As he continued walking along, a shadow came up behind him and an emotionless voice spoke up, "Hello, Naruto-kun. Story of the ten-tailed wolf. I demand that brat be punished for his transgressions." Sarutobi held back a sigh as he stared at the man in front of him. Fugaku Uchiha was the head of the Uchiha clan and leader of the police force. He had short black hair and onyx eyes, with visible creases below them that were made more pronounced whenever he adopted a stern look like right now. He wore a simple kimono with gray pants which had the clan symbol on the back. The man was currently trying to demand that Naruto be punished for the prank that had just been played on his clan. Somehow, someone had snuck into the Uchiha compound and in the span of one night had taken and dyed all of their underwear pink, then strung them up on the buildings around Konoha. It was just one of the many pranks that had been played on Fugaku's clan, along with several prominent business owners. "Do you have any proof that Naruto is the one who played this prank?" asked Sarutobi. Fugaku scowled, "Of course I do. He was there at the scene of the crime and ran away when my men tried to apprehend him." "A lot of people were there at the scene of the crime," Sarutobi pointed out, hiding his frayed patience behind a mask of calm. Fugaku had always hated Naruto for holding the Kyuubi. The Uchiha clan had been one of the clans that had suffered the most during the incident, losing nearly one-third of their clan to the Great Demon. Because of that, even though Fugaku knew that Naruto was not the Kyuubi, he still blamed the boy for the fox's transgressions. "Also, need I remind that your people had not even bothered to question him, simply blamed him for the prank." Sarutobi had seen the little incident that had caused the chase through Konoha and knew who was really at fault. "And we all know how the Uchiha clan has treated him in the past, so it's no wonder here and when your men attempted to apprehend him and then chased after him. Besides," the old Hokage added when he saw the man's scowling crease, "are you telling me that Naruto was good enough to somehow slip past all of the clan members you have guarding your compound?" If possible, the Uchiha clan leader's scowl increased as he found himself caught in the wily old man's trap. If he admitted that his clan was not good enough to capture one child, a child who was also wearing hideously bright orange clothes that were impossible to miss, from sneaking in, his clan would end up being the laughingstock at the next meeting, even more so than they would be already for having this prank happen to them in the first place. "No child could ever get past our guards," Fugaku ground out, knowing he had lost this battle. "Then there is no way Naruto could have done it," Sarutobi replied, "but rest assured I will do all in my power to find out who did this." Sending one more scowl at Sarutobi, Fugaku spun around and walked out of the door, slamming it on his way out. The Sandaime sighed as he let himself lean back in his chair, one hand absently opening a drawer and pulling out his pipe and some tobacco. He placed the tobacco in the pipe and lit it with a small Kaiten, fire release jutsu, absently puffing on it as he thought of this new problem. The mass pranks had only started about 8 months ago, around the same time Naruto had started the academy. Ever since then merchants, specific civilians and clans, had been hit with a string of pranks, though this recent one was the largest prank by far. He didn't really know who it was, and even though he, like many others, suspected Naruto since he was at every single incident, there was no actual proof that he had done it. Besides, how does a 6-year-old child sneak into the Anbu HQ and paint their changing room neon green? Just then the door opened and in walked the troublemaker himself. Like always, he was wearing an orange tracksuit with blue on the upper shoulders area, as well as up and down the front, a white swirl with a tassel on the left side, a red swirl on the back, a big white collar, orange pants, and blue sandals. Why the boy had decided to pick up such a hideous outfit was beyond the aging Hokage. It was the largest eyesore he had ever seen, almost as bad as Midogai's green spandex. Behind Naruto came his most trusted Anbu agent, Itachi Uchiha, who had an amused look in his eyes, clearly visible even behind his mask. "Ah, Naruto-kun, I just had a conversation about you," Sarutobi said. "Was it about how you're finally ready to give me that hat, Aji-san?" asked Naruto in a very loud, very obnoxious voice. "No, I'm afraid not," Sarutobi puffed on his pipe. "You see, there was a recent prank with the Uchiha clan recently." "Ano-sa, isn't that your family Itachi Nai?" asked Naruto, looking up at the weasel-masked Anbu agent. "Yes, it is Naruto-kun," said Itachi, a smile hidden by his mask. "So what happened to them?" asked Naruto. "It seems someone snuck into the Uchiha clan compound, stole all their underwear, dyed it bright pink, and then strung it throughout Konoha." Sarutobi was suddenly interrupted by a shout of awesome from Naruto. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about this, would you, Naruto-kun?" he finished. I saw all the pink underwear if that's what you're talking about. Naruto scratched the back of his head as his eyes took on a squint that made him look like a fox. But you have no clue who did it? Pressed Sarutobi. Of course I do. Shouted Naruto, raising a fist into the air and shaking it right before a dumb look crossed his face. Where is the Uchiha-chan red-eyed compound again? Sarutobi pinched the bridge of his nose at the sheepish and stupid look at the blonde's face. Never mind. You're supposed to be at the academy anyways, Itachi, see to it that he gets there. Of course, Hokage-sama, Itachi bowed before placing a hand on the young blonde's shoulder. Come along Naruto-kun, time to go to the academy. Aw, but the academy is so boring. Whined Naruto as they made their way out, leaving Sarutobi to contemplate just who was pranking his village. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. I was most impressed with your prank this time, Itachi said as he and Naruto were walking towards the academy. He knew that the young blonde really was behind the pranks, but it was so funny watching the others run around trying to find out who did it that he had not said anything. It was very creative. Naruto grinned, thanks. I thought it was pretty masterful myself. I am also pleased that you did not touch mine or my Ka-san's underwear, the normally stoic Anbu added with an amused look. Grinning sheepishly, Naruto scratched the back of his head, yeah, well the raven-haired Anbu captain shook his head before stopping in front of the door that led to Naruto's classroom. Excuse me, Itachi said as he opened the door and had Naruto walk in, I found him wandering around town and felt that it would be prudent of me to escort him to his class. The person in charge of the class, a man with graying hair and green eyes, said, thank you, even as he gave Naruto a glare of malicious hatred. Itachi noticed the glare but did not do anything that would get him in trouble, instead making a mental note to report this guy to the Hokage as someone to watch out for. He gave a nod and left via Sunshin. Sit down boy, the man said, scowl still in place. You got it, Shinsei-sensei. Naruto shouted, he knew what the man had really wanted to say. Like many others Shinsei hated his guts because of a cane, no doubt the man wanted to call him a demon like the others but was prevented from doing so thanks to being in the academy with people who did not know of her being sealed into him. Naruto knew very well that there was a law that supposedly prevented people from telling their children or anyone else who didn't know about the sealing, though it didn't prevent them from telling the children to stay away from him. He walked over to an empty seat and plopping down and stretching out. The lessons soon began and Naruto found himself bored as hell. All the man was talking about was how the Shodaime Hokage founded the village and Naruto had already read all about that. Man, I'm so bored, Naruto complained to Akane as Shinsei continued droning on. Well, we could always come up with a prank to lighten up the moment, Akane suggested. Maybe Naruto looked around at all of the students, they were all 2 years older than him. Very few academy students ever entered at the age of 6 anymore since they were no longer in a time of war and the previous loss of shinobi from the Kyuubi attack had been filled for the most part. The civilian council had made a new law that essentially cut the shinobi academy down by 2 years. Now most academy students didn't start until they turned 8. Uzumaki. Shinsei yelled, smirking at seeing him not paying attention, since you don't seem to like paying attention you can leave. What? But I am paying attention. Naruto shouted as he stood up and jutted his chin out with a stubborn look. Oh, then when did the first Hokage found the village? The day he founded the village of course. Naruto shouted, scratching the back of his head. Shinsei smirked as the class laughed at Naruto who was scowling. Obviously you're not paying attention and until you do I will not have you in my class. He may not be able to be so blatantly unfair that he would draw the attention of the Hokage, but he was more than capable of doing something like this. Naruto scowled before walking out the door and slamming it shut. As soon as he passed the threshold for the academy he grinned, thank God, I really didn't want to be in there anymore. To the training ground? Asked Akane, grinning at her blonde container, even though he didn't know it. Naruto gave a smile that if the two could have seen each other, would have realized were the exact same, of course. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Ugh, I can't believe that jerk kicked me out again, Naruto thought to himself as he walked through the streets of Konoha. Are you complaining? Asked Akane, her voice belying her amusement. Of course not, Naruto said, scoffing a little. Honestly, how could I complain about getting out of that boring classroom where all we learn about is that the Shodaime could make wood out of the nothing, the Nidaime could pull water out of the air, the Sandaime could pull every jutsu in Konoha out of his ass, and the Yondaime could flash from one point to the next in less than a second. It's the most boring class I've ever been in. It's also the only class you've ever been in, she quipped. Whatever, Naruto stopped talking and took a deep sniff of the air. There was a heavenly aroma coming from somewhere. What is that smell? It smells incredible. Ooh boy, thought Akane as Naruto began to follow the scent, she knew what it was. Somehow, she wasn't surprised that it had caught his attention, she had honestly expected him to find it ages ago. Naruto soon found himself standing in front of a small stand. It didn't look like much, just a very small building with flaps on it that said Ichiraku's. Behind that the blonde could see a small bar with several stools and behind that, what looked like assorted cooking gear. Even though it didn't look like much, this was where the smell was coming from and Naruto couldn't help but enter, his mouth watering slightly at the scent. As he stood at the entrance an old man walked in through a door in the back of the bar, stopping when he noticed Naruto standing there with a glazed expression. "Well, hello there," the old man said in a friendly voice, snapping the blonde out of his daze and making him blush as he realized that he hadn't even noticed the man come in. The old man saw it and chuckled, "Welcome to Ichiraku's. What can I get for you?" Naruto opened his mouth to speak, only to close it several times. He looked at the man cautiously and was surprised to find that he had no malicious aura or ill intent towards him. The blonde scratched the back of his head as he relaxed slightly, though he was still prepared to run if necessary. "I'm not sure, I just sort of followed my nose." "And here you are," the old man finished with a chuckle, "well, hop on the stool, and I'll give you a menu." Doing as Naruto hopped on the closest stool, where he began swinging his legs lightly since they were about 2 feet off the ground. The old man came over and passed him a menu, pausing when he noticed the whisker marks. Naruto saw him looking at them and tensed, an act which did not go unnoticed by the old ramen chef owner as he set the menu next to him and gave a smile. "Just let me know what you want and I'll have it cooked up in a jiff." Naruto gaped at him for a moment before blushing, speaking in a low voice he said, I would like to try something, but I don't have any money." He moved to get up but received a shock when the old man placed a hand on his shoulder and pushed him back down. "Then the first time will be on the house," he said, a cheerful smile on his face. "It would be a shame if I were to lose a customer just because he didn't have any money on him. Now, what will you have?" I don't know," Naruto looked at the menu, "maybe some miso." "Miso huh? Coming right up." The old man turned his head and cupped his mouth as he shouted, "Oi, am. Get in here, we have a customer." "Okay." A voice came from the back before a young girl, who looked to be around 10 or 11 years old, with brown hair that was in a bun and brown eyes came in. She walked over to the two of them and looked at Naruto, blinking in idle curiosity, causing Naruto to tilt his head in confusion. "Kawaii." The squeal startled Naruto so much that he almost fell out of his seat and likely would have were it not for the fact that AM had somehow magically appeared next to him and was currently squeezing the life out of him. "Oh Two-sen, he's so cute." She gushed as Naruto tried to decide whether he should feel embarrassed by her words or petrified that this girl who he had met not more than a few seconds ago was choking him with her hug. He was thankful when she let go, at least for a few seconds, because she soon began to rub his whiskers. "I've never seen such cute birthmarks," she said, running a finger over them. They were slightly bumpy, rather than being smooth, almost like a scar. Against his will Naruto began to make a purring sound in the back of his throat. Of course, this was the wrong thing to do when around a young girl. "Kawaii." Naruto suddenly found himself back to being squeezed to death and was now fearing for his life. He wondered how long he would survive without oxygen. "AM, you may want to let him go," the old man said, "it looks like you're choking him." AM looked down to see Naruto, blue in the face, with swirls in his eyes. "Oh. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. I was just trying." The old man laughed as Naruto began to get his bearings back. "How about you just help me make some miso?" "Miso? Coming right up." AM said enthusiastically as she somehow appeared back behind the bar. Watching her do that, Naruto was almost reminded of the Yandame's ability to flash from one point to another. A few minutes later the food that the delicious smell was coming from was placed in front of him by AM. "Eat up," she said cheerfully. Naruto sniffed at the ramen, taking in its heavenly aroma before breaking apart a pair of chopsticks. Wrapping the noodles around them he took a bite, rolling the food around in his mouth before he froze. The ramen chef and his daughter tensed, wondering if he didn't like the ramen. This is delicious," Naruto shouted, right before he began to gorge himself on the bowl of ramen. The old man looked from the currently stuffing his face Naruto to his daughter, AM-chan, "I think we just found our #1 customer." Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. "Okay Naruto-kun, I think you're ready to learn actual hand-to-hand combat," Akane told her container as he finished exercising. The blonde academy student had gained a lot physical prowess, for a 6-year-old that is. With the extremely demanding workout, combined with his large chakra reserves and the very good amount of control he had over his chakra, Naruto could likely already beat any genin out there. Now, Taijutsu is simply a basic form of jutsu that typically does not require chakra, but chakra may be used to enhance techniques. Taijutsu generally require no hand seals to perform and are much quicker to use than ninjutsu or genjutsu. Taijutsu is simply put, hand-to-hand combat. Taijutsu is something that everyone, including most demons, use in combat, and there are many different styles. The style I will be teaching you is called Kitsunekin, Fox Fist, and is a style I myself came up with many years ago when I was under the command of Inari-sama, Fox God. Akane paused for a moment before continuing, now, the style I'm going to teach you actually takes the essence of a fox and imbues it into your fighting, meaning that it requires the use of a combination of feints and quick counterattacks to weaken vital areas. We use trickery every chance we get to deceive our opponents and create openings in their guard to exploit, much like a fox. To use this style requires a great amount of speed, flexibility, dexterity, constitution and endurance. Is that why you always make sure I exhaust myself to the point where I damn near pass out every time I train? Asked Naruto. The exercises that Akane often made him do were always extremely exhausting and often painful. Several times he had been so tired that he had fallen asleep in the training field. Those were the few times he cursed the vixen in his head. Yes, this style is not made for humans. It requires more energy and ability than a regular human can produce, Akane hummed in thought. I had been debating on teaching you this style until you turned into a Hanyu, but I feel it would be better if you got a decent grasp on it sooner, rather than later. Head home and come into the seal so I can begin working on this style with you. Yes ma'am. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Another year passed and Naruto continued to grow and improve. His nights in the seal were now spent working on his taijutsu, which Akane had shown him. For the first 4 months this had consisted of going through the katas that he was taught. His friend and mentor would correct him when his stances went wrong, often making him go through all of them again if he made a mistake. During that time she would always comment on the various attacks that could be done from each position and the best way to counterattack when someone would make a specific move. When Akane had deemed him passable in the taijutsu katas she moved on to sparring. Because of his A, lack of a sparring partner, and B, Akane wanting to see him so she can correct his flaws, she had Naruto spar with her in the mindscape. Sparring being more like beating the holy hell out of Naruto and then telling him what he did wrong. Come on Naruto-kun, you have to do better than that. Akane shouted in a sing-song voice that she knew would bother him and make him angry enough to make mistakes. Naruto never liked to be looked down upon. Grrr. Naruto growled as he stood up, I'll show you. He came in hard, moving quite fast for someone who was only 7 years old. However, that was nowhere near fast enough to catch her off guard. As Naruto moved in he aimed a claw swipe at Akane's midsection. This was met with the redhead using a hand to subtly shift his attack away from her, while at the same time using her other hand to launch a fast strike that caught the blonde in the solar plexus. Naruto gasped and likely would have flown back several feet and landed on his back, but Akane had grabbed his left wrist and pulled him before he could get away. She spun around 180 degrees, taking Naruto with her before she let go, releasing the blonde and sending him flying several feet away, where he hit the ground rolled along the ground before coming to a stop several feet away. You're not thinking clearly anymore, Akane admonished, you can't let yourself go off half-cocked and expect to win. Oftentimes it's not the stronger opponent who wins, but the one who thinks with the clearest head. Right, Naruto winced as he sat up and rubbed his chest, sorry. Don't apologize, just get back up and start again, this time, with a calm mind. Naruto took a deep breath as he stood up, his legs felt a little wobbly, but he managed not to fall over. Looking up at his opponent he saw her standing there with the same smirk she had on every time they sparred. Okay, here I go, he breathed, right before charging at her. He came in with several high-low claw strikes that were aimed at the vital points in the human body, septum, larynx, clavicle, solar plexus, floating ribs, radius bone, inner thigh and several other areas of weakness. When using this form of taijutsu, it was necessary to have intimate knowledge of the inner workings of the creature you were fighting. Akane had made Naruto study up on the human body by going to the library, which he had been able to use ever since the Hokage had the previous librarian who worked there arrested and a more malleable one had taken her place. Akane weaved through the strikes, lightly deflecting every attack that might have come close to hitting her. She was impressed with how good Naruto had become in just under a year, it showed just how determined and intelligent the blonde really was. She almost felt it was a shame that he had to hide it from everyone else. Oh well, their loss. Not bad Naru-chan, Akane teased before lashing out with a soft edge strike to the throat. It was so fast that Naruto hadn't even seen the attack before he was on his knees, wheezing as he tried to take in a breath but couldn't due to having his throat temporarily closed from the strike. A minute later he was on his back again, in a slight daze, after his nose had a meeting with Akane's knee. I think that's enough for now, Akane said as she walked over to where he had landed after her strike. It's been about 2 hours non-stop fighting. You're improving well. Naruto blinked several times in an effort to get the stars out of his eyes, he sat up a few moments later and looked at Akane. How strong do you think I'll be when I graduate? He asked. It's hard to say, said Akane, sitting down as her tail spread out behind her. On pure power alone, you'll be able to beat any jonin you ever run across, maybe even a Kage, though you won't have the experience that they do. That was something she would need to help him with, sometime soon she would have to help him with his first kill. But that was for another time. And speaking of graduating, she paused and took a deep breath, I think you should fail your first 2 years. What? Naruto gave her a shocked wide-eyed look, why? Because we need people to believe that you're not a threat until I can change you, she said. If people saw what you were capable of right now, and if you graduated too soon, they would assume you were dangerous and it could get out of hand. Well, how long will it be until you change me? I need my Yauki to fully integrate into your chakra coils, so I would say about 5 years. Akane looked thoughtful for a moment and nodded, yes, 5 years should do it. So when I'm 12 then? Yes. Naruto thought about what she was saying, he really didn't want to wait 2 extra years to graduate. But fine, he said, I understand what you're saying, I'll wait. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, she told him, placing a hand on his left leg, but at least this way you'll also be with people your own age. You know that doesn't really matter to me, he told her as he grabbed her hand and began to play with her fingers, an odd habit he had never gotten out of when he was younger and she used to tell him stories. You're the only person I care about. Akane felt herself blush, why does he always have to say the sweetest damn things? And so innocently too. She had never been in this situation before and had no clue why she was acting this way. Could it really be? She wondered, but quickly shook her head. He's just a kid, there's no way I could be in love with a 7-year-old boy. But if that were the case, why was it that her heart would flutter every time he cuddled up to her when they were done training? Why was it that she couldn't get him off of her mind? Maybe I do feel something, she admitted as she looked down at Naruto who was staring around her cell with a frown. But he's too young right now, well I don't really care about age, he wouldn't even understand the concepts of a relationship for several more years. I'll wait and see what develops when he gets older, much older. Is something wrong Naruto-kun? Asked Akane. Yeah, Naruto's frown continued as he looked over at her, I was just looking around the mindscape. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I don't like how bleak it is. Is there a way to change it? Akane paused and looked at him curiously, tilting her head. I don't know, very few beings can actually use powers that affect the mind, and even fewer can access their mindscape. Even most demons are incapable of accessing their mind. It's a very rare skill, the only reason you can do it is because I'm sealed inside of you. I see Naruto thought for several moments as he looked around. Nodding to himself he closed his eyes and began to concentrate. Akane looked at Naruto oddly and opened her mouth to ask him what he was doing when she saw something that shocked her. From the point where Naruto was sitting, a ripple was spreading out and when it left, only white could be seen. In only a few seconds, the knee-deep water, the cage, the dark craggy walls and the barely illuminated landscape was gone. In its place was nothing more than what could be considered a white space, where there was no difference between the floor, the walls or the ceiling, and the entire area just seemed to go on. Akane actually felt slightly queasy just looking at the wide area that seemed to give no sense of direction. Another ripple soon spread out from Naruto, however this one left green in its place. Not just green Akane realized with shock, but grass. Lush-looking green grass a few inches tall, it spread out from underneath Naruto and began to encompass the floor. Starting from a point above her, blue began to spread out along walls and ceiling. Where the walls and ceilings had previously been was a light blue sky, with a sprinkling of clouds and a bright yellow sun. Trees and other foliage soon began to sprout up from the ground, covering the area to create a forest. The entire process only took several minutes. Before Akane could marvel at what just happened, a soft gasp of breath alerted her to Naruto, who was laying on his back looking exhausted. Sweat marred his bar and he was breathing heavily, as if he had just done one of the workout routines she had given him. Crawling over to the blonde, Akane sat back down and crossed her legs, bringing Naruto's head into her lap, where she began to play with his hair. You do know what you just did is impossible, right? She said, grinning to hide the surprise she herself felt from seeing what had just transpired. No one without mind powers should be able to do what you did. Perhaps I have mind powers and you just don't know it, Naruto smiled as he sighed in content as Akane's fingers lightly raked over his scalp. Closing his eyes he leaned into the redhead's touch. No, she looked at in amusement, the only clan that received the powers of the mind are the Amanakas because of a service they gave to Kami several hundred years ago, and the Rikido Sennin who had done the gods a great justice and was rewarded with the Samsara eyes. And I don't have mind powers, so there is no way I could have passed them on to you. Perhaps I'm just awesome then. Akane laughed, perhaps you are. Her eyes softened a tad as she looked at him, you're exhausted, get some rest, I'll take care of you. Okay, Naruto said with a soft yawn, night. Good night, Akane whispered as Naruto went out like a light. That entire night she watched him as he slept, gently running her hands through his hair. Chapter 5. Growing Up. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Sarutobi looked at the young blonde who was like a grandson to him, giving him a sheepish and slightly ashamed look. "Naruto-kun," he said exasperatedly, "this is the second time you've failed. I'm not sure what to do anymore." "It wasn't my fault, Dedabeo." Naruto shouted loudly enough that the windows rattled and Sarutobi had to cover his ears. "It was that stupid Kimihiko. He hates me, he always sends me out of class. And he never lets me participate in any of the activities. He hates me." "Naruto-kun," Sarutobi said with a disappointed look, "teachers go through several tests to ensure they do not show any favoritism or refusal to teach another student. Perhaps if you actually took your studies seriously and not skipped class so much, you wouldn't have failed." Naruto scratched his head for a moment before giving him a sheepish look. "I'm sorry Aji-san, I really did try. Class is always so boring. I don't care when the whatever law for lumber was made. I want to learn to be a ninja." The look the aging Hokage gave Naruto was a look between exasperated and amused. "Naruto-kun, if you want to be Hokage, then it is important to learn these things. A Hokage isn't just a fighter, he is a leader, and it is his job to make decisions that affect the entire village." He gave the sheepish-looking blonde a serious stare. "Understand?" "Of course I do." Naruto shouted, "I promise, next time, I'll pass for sure. Then you'll have no choice but to hand over that hat Aji-san." "I'm sure you will," Sarutobi said with a humoring smile. He watched as the excitable blonde ran out of the door and sighed, wondering just what he was going to do with that child. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. "So what should I do now I wonder?" Naruto asked himself. It was summer and he had just failed the academy for the second time like Akane wanted him to. He was now 8 years old and would be placed with the kids his age next year. That meant he had an entire summer with nothing but training and pranks lined up. "Actually, there's some place I would like you to go," Akane said, interrupting his musings. Before he could ask the obvious question, the demoness spoke again. "Go behind the Hokage monument, it should be somewhere around there." She had decided that he was old enough to learn of his heritage, she had been working with him for a long time now, and he had grown a lot. She was positive he was mature enough to handle it. "Okay," Naruto said, turning around and beginning to head in the opposite direction. He wasn't really sure where he was going, but figured that Akane would tell him when he got there. The area behind the monument was mainly forest, with only a few small ponds dotting the area. It was uninhabited by any buildings or people. Naruto was curious about why that was, but didn't think on it long. After nearly an hour of searching, Naruto finally asked, "Okay, what is it I'm looking for?" "In a minute, keep going forward, we're almost there." Naruto sighed but did as told, walking forward for several more minutes. "Stop." Halting, Naruto looked around to see what Akane thought was here. When he couldn't find anything he frowned. "So what am I looking for?" "Can't you feel it?" asked Akane. "Feel what?" "Reach out with your chakra and you'll see," she replied cryptically. Naruto did as told, summoning some chakra and sending it out in a pulse just like Akane had told him. When he did that, the blonde saw an odd shimmer in the air, a wavy form similar to what one would find in the summer heat. "What's that?" asked Naruto, curious since he had never seen something like that before. "A jinjutsu," Akane answered. "Jinjutsu are techniques that are employed in the same fashion as ninjutsu, requiring chakra-enhanced seals. However, the primary difference between the two is that the effects of jinjutsu are illusionary. Instead of attacking the victim's body, like taijutsu or ninjutsu, jinjutsu techniques manipulate the flow of chakra in the victim's brain, thus causing a disruption in their senses." "I know what they are, Naruto said with a pout. "You did explain them to me." "Right, sorry," Akane said, looking a little sheepish even though Naruto could not see her. "So you want me to dispel it?" "Yes, do you remember how?" "There are several ways to dispel a jinjutsu. The first is to cut off the flow of one's chakra and then release the chakra in a greater amount than the jinjutsu required. And the second is to cause physical pain to yourself to disrupt its flow." "Very good," Akane said, "however, that won't work for this one. This jinjutsu is an area-wide jinjutsu that has likely been here for several years, at least 8. So how do I dispel it?" "You can't, you lack the finesse to dispel something like this," Akane said, smirking as she waited for him to get the answer. Naruto scowled. "Then why are we?" He stopped as the answer came to him. "You can dispel it, can't you?" "Excellent job. Yes, I can dispel it. Well, I've already given you permission to take control when you feel the need, so do your thing." Naruto's eyes soon shifted from blue to red with black slits. Looking around, Akane spoke in a very soft language that Naruto didn't understand. A few moments later there was an almost gentle and undetectable pulse of Yaki before the air around began to shimmer. A few feet away a decent-sized 2-story house appeared in front of them, wavering in front of them like a ghost before it became solid. "Where are we?" asked Naruto. "What is this place?" "Go in and you'll find out." Naruto frowned. Akane was being really cryptic today. Normally, she would just come right out and tell him what was going on. He decided to think about that later and just go in to get his answers. As he began to walk towards the house he examined it in more detail. It was a fairly nice looking house. Made of a combination of brick and wood, right in front of it was what looked like it had at one point been a flower garden of some kind, but it overgrown with weeds and other forms of flora. Aside from that, the house was very nice. "Hey Akane-chan, how did you know this house was here?" asked Naruto as that particular thought occurred. She seemed to know her way around Konoha pretty well, considering she had been more busy destroying the village than observing it. "You don't think the day I attacked was the only other time I've ever been to Konoha, do you?" asked Akane, sounding amused. Naruto frowned. "So you've been in Konoha before? How come no one ever saw you?" "They did, they just never noticed who I was. As you've obviously seen, I don't always look like a giant nine-tailed fox." Naruto blinked in surprise at that, before remembering she was likely in her human form when visiting. "So when were the other times you had come to Konoha?" "Actually, I was here before Konoha was ever built," she told Naruto, shocking the blonde. "I, along with the 8 other bijuu, were sent here by Kami to complete a task. When we accomplished that task, Kami gave us our own lands to look after. Being the strongest of the 9 and a being of fire, I was given Hai no Kuni, the nation with the largest amount of land, to look after. It was our job to protect and act as the guardian of the lands we had been given, and we did so for nearly 1,000 years. The one you know as the Shadame Hokage had actually come to me to ask for permission to settle on this land. I was there at Konoha's founding." "Wow," Naruto's mental voice held an odd tone to it, causing Akane to snicker. The blonde frowned a moment later. "Wait, so why do people think the bijuu are nothing more than monsters?" Akane was silent for a moment, then she sighed as she thought of how best to explain this particular piece of history. "Times change, Naruto-kun," she said softly, deciding to be upfront with her knowledge. "People change. Over the years humans began to fear the power of us bijuu. They tried to capture and subdue us out of that fear. I remember hearing about Ichibi no Shukaku, one-tailed tanuki, getting sealed in a tea kettle, the Nibi no Nakamata, two-tailed cat, getting sealed into a shrine. One by one all of the bijuu became sealed away because our powers were so feared. All but me. Of course, you can only seal a bijuu into an object up to the Yonbi." Akane could almost feel Naruto's amazement at her story and would have smiled had the story not depressed her. When the gobi was sealed, humans soon began to realize that they could use the power of the bijuu as weapons. It was actually the Rikubi no Raijuu, six-tailed weasel, getting sealed into a human, and that human using its power to destroy a neighboring village that caused what you call the First Great Shinobi War. "Whoa," Naruto muttered, stunned at hearing the true reason for the First War. It was much different than what they were taught at the academy. It was much cooler too, in his opinion anyways. "Anyways, I'll tell you some more later. For now, you need to go inside the house." Standing in front of the door, Naruto looked at the doorknob with a frown. There were several weird squiggly lines on the knob that reminded the blonde of the seal on his stomach. Akane noticed what he was looking at and made to reassure him. "Don't worry about those seals, Naruto-kun. Place your hand on the doorknob and it should open." "Okay." He reached out with a hand and grasped the doorknob. However, the moment he did, Naruto began to feel weaker. It was with a start that he realized the door was sucking out his chakra. He tried to pull his hand off, only to find that it was somehow stuck. Placing his other hand on his wrist and a foot on the door, he tried to pry it off to no success. "Calm down, Naruto-kun," Akane said, trying to keep the blonde from hurting himself. "It's just taking the amount of chakra you need to open the door." As she said this, the door stopped pulling on Naruto's chakra and there was a soft click signifying the door was unlocked. Naruto stared at it wearily before, with some prodding along from Akane, he opened the door. The first room he stepped into looked like some kind of living room. The area was carpeted with thick, rich-looking carpet. On the farthest side away from him was a fireplace, with a glass coffee table next to it and several couches around it. There were a few pictures of a man with spiked golden blonde hair that looked very similar to his own, and a beautiful red-haired woman hanging along the walls. Despite no fire going and no one having lived in here, which was obvious from the several layers of dust that covered the furniture, it gave off a very homely feel. "Akane-chan, whose house are we in?" asked Naruto as he walked around the room and looked at all of the pictures. Each one held either the golden-haired man or the red-haired woman. Some had the man standing with what Naruto could recognize as a squad of genin. A boy with spiky silver hair, another boy with spiky black hair and goggles, and a young girl with triangle markings on her cheeks. There were pictures of the man with another man who had long, spiky white hair and was wearing red kabuki clothes. There were pictures of the redhead standing with a squad of Anbu who all had their masks off, or having her with her own squad of what looked like genin, even if the little black-haired child looked far too young to be a genin. And pictures of the man and the woman wrapped around each other. Naruto didn't know why, but he felt like he should know these too. Akane sighed as she sensed his thoughts. "Naruto-kun, why don't you go up to the second floor, enter the last door on the right, and then enter the mindscape?" Naruto raised an eyebrow, a part of him just wanted her to answer his questions. Why did he feel like he should know those people in the pictures? Why did he feel like he had finally come home when entering this house, despite having never been here before? And why did Akane seem to know where to go in here? However, he knew her well enough to know that until he did what she told him to, Akane would not budge. He followed her instruction, walking through the door in front him and into a hallway. He turned left, since that was the side with the staircase, and walked towards it and then up the stairs, absently taking note that there seemed to be a basement since the stairs led down as well as up. When he reached the second floor, he looked around and found himself in another hallway. He walked through the hall and stopped at the last door on the right. A sudden feeling of trepidation came over him. What would he find on the other side of this door? Why did he get the feeling that he was standing on the threshold of some life-changing moment? These were questions that he had no answer to. Naruto-kun. For some reason Akane's soft alto voice made him relax. The feeling of trepidation was still there. But it was much more manageable. Yes. Are you alright? I'm fine. Naruto took a deep breath, blowing it out. He opened the door and stepped through. He had not been sure what he would find on the other side, but what he did was certainly not what he expected. The walls were painted a soft orange with blue strips, all around the room were large, stuffed toys, and in the center of the room was a cradle. Naruto knew this was a nursery for a newborn. For whatever reason, the sight of this room caused unshed tears to gather at the corner of the blonde's eyes. What is this place? Naruto asked Akane, why have you brought me here? This was going to be your room, Naruto-kun, Akane said softly. Naruto's eyes widened, what? Hum into the seal, all will be explained. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Within the seal, Naruto found Akane sitting over by the lake he had created. Her knees were drawn up to her chest, arms wrapped around her legs and her head resting her on knees. When she saw Naruto, she moved into a cross-legged position as he sat in front of her. She sighed as she saw the look he was giving her. It was a slightly confused look of trepidation, like he knew she was keeping something from him and all the trust he had placed in her had been misplaced. It was a look she had never wanted to see on the blonde and hoped to never see again. I promise to tell you everything I know, all I ask is that you don't talk until I'm finished. Okay. The young blonde before her gave a sharp nod of assent. Now, where to begin? I suppose I should start by saying that I had been living in Konoha for 6 months before I attacked, or I guess it would be more accurate to say, was forced to attack. She saw Naruto open his mouth to ask a question and held up a hand, all will be explained later, I promise. When the young blonde closed his mouth, she continued, every decade I would head out of my home, a secret home I had built many centuries ago, that no one other than myself can even reach, much less enter. I would travel around Hai no Kuni and gather information on what has been going on in my land, as is my job as its guardian. Konoha had been my last stop, mainly because it is this village where most of the important information and happenings come from. When I got here, I had done my usual routine, going into bars, which are always a prime source of information no matter the era, charming men with my beauty, in order to find out if anything important has happened, and exploring the town, just so I could mingle with the people and make sure I knew the general atmosphere. While here, however, something interesting happened. Akane took a deep breath before plunging on, I met your mother and father. Naruto gaped at the woman in front of him. She had met his parents. As an orphan, Naruto had always wondered about who his parents were. The matron had told him that they had left him because they didn't want a demon for a son. The old Hokage had told him that he didn't know who his parents had been, even though Naruto could tell the man was lying. It had been the reason he had stopped asking about them. He hadn't wanted to listen to one of the only 2 people who cared for him lie. Yet here was Akane, saying she knew who his parents were. Why hadn't she told him? Why did she wait until now to inform him about his parents? I had actually met them when I was wandering the town, she continued on, unaware of Naruto's thoughts. Some pervert with white hair had attempted to make a pass at me, and after I had finished beating him into the ground I was confronted with your mother, stars in her eyes, telling me how cool I was. Akane favored him with a soft smile. Your mother's name was Kushina Uzumaki. She was a kunoichi from the now destroyed Yuzushiogakure, which is located on an island just a few miles off of Mizu no Kuni. Like all Uzumaki members, she had bright red hair and purple eyes and the fiercest temper you would ever see. I remember talking with her and telling her that I was actually a trader looking to establish a shop here. She introduced me to Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, and your father. It was at these words that Naruto began breathing heavily. And my father is the Yondaime? Asked Naruto in a state of shock. The Yondaime Hokage had always been a mixed subject for him. On one hand, the man was considered the most powerful shinobi since the time of the Rikido Sennin, even Akane respected him for his battle prowess. On the other, he was the man who had sealed Akane inside of him, the reason he had no family or friends. It was his fault that he had been abused, neglected, and beaten since the day he was born. And now, Akane was telling him that this man was his father. Yes, Akane said sadly, he was your father. Your mother was actually pregnant with you when I was doing my negotiations with the Yondaime. She sighed, Minato Namikaze was a man unlike any other, calm, collected and so highly intelligent that I sometimes felt dumb in his presence. However, he had one glaring weakness, which was also his most incredible strength. His trust in others, it was this trust that made him decide to seal me into you when I went on a rampage. I see it was all he could think of to say. Never in a million years would he have suspected something like this. Of course, now that he thought about it what she was telling him made sense. Like just why out of all the possible children that could have been chosen to hold Akane, he was the one picked. What better person to hold such power than one's own son? There was also Naruto's looks, he had always noticed the similarities between himself and the Yondaime. In fact he was surprised that he hadn't recognized the man in the pictures downstairs, granted he had been more focused on the house itself and wondering why the place felt familiar, but he should have recognized the man. Ever since he had first seen the picture of the man in the Hokage's office, he had seen the similarities, but he had written it off as a coincidence. After all, who would be willing to do something like seal a powerful demon inside of your own family? He grit his teeth as he felt tears leaking out of the corners of his eyes, doing his best to hold the flood of tears that threatened to overwhelm him. He had never cried before, not since the beating he had received that sent him to Akane. No matter how bad things had gotten he had refused to shed tears, and he would not do so now. Just as these thoughts came to mind, he found himself wrapped up in a delicate hug as Akane let his head rest on her bosom. It's okay to cry, Naruto-kun, she whispered softly while a hand began to gently run through his hair, massaging his scalp. Naruto felt a tear run down his cheek, then a sob racked his body. Finally, the dam holding up his emotions broke. His body heaved with earth-shattering sobs as he remembered all the times he had ever been abused, all the times he had been neglected and isolated at the orphanage, every single beating and insult he had received. Throughout it all, Akane held him, whispering words in his ears. Just let it all out Naruto-kun, she said, letting him cling to her tightly, everything will be alright. The amount of time Naruto cried was interminable, time meant next to nothing while within the seal. Eventually, his tears ceased and his body stopped shaking. He slumped against Akane, whose only response was to hold him tighter. Why didn't you tell me before now? He asked, his voice cracked and emotional from all he had learned. Would it have done any good? Akane asked in a soft voice. Would it have changed anything? I wanted to make sure you were mature enough to realize what it meant to be the son of two such famous people. What do you mean? Asked Naruto, accepting her explanation at face value, his previous anger at her forgotten. She had never lied to him, and he had never asked her if she knew his parents, so in a way it was his fault too. Naruto, Minato Namikaze was famous because he had killed nearly 1,000 ninja in a single battle, thanks to his Hiraishin, Akane said. Not only was he the most feared man in the world, he was widely hated by Iwa, who feel he is the reason they lost the war. If people knew I was his son they'd try to kill me, wouldn't they? Said Naruto. Yes, and we already have to deal with the fools here, Akane joked, trying to lighten the situation. Having to deal with both internal and external threats would not be easy. Naruto chuckled, but it came out sounding more like a sob as he buried his face deeper into Akane's chest. Thank you, Akane-chan, for not keeping this from me, he said softly. Akane smiled as she kissed his hair, you're welcome. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. The next morning Naruto woke up to find himself still in the room that had been set up for him. On Akane's suggestion, Naruto began exploring the house. The first two floors weren't much, the first floor held a kitchen dining room, the living room he had entered from, and an office. The second floor was just filled with bedrooms, 3 guest rooms, the one baby room, and the master bedroom. They were all well furnished with nice, albeit out-of-date and dusty furniture. It was the basement, however, that drew Naruto's attention. The entire basement was in a word, gigantic. Larger than the house that sat on top of it, the basement consisted of 3 floors. The first floor contained a dojo, the room was just a large flat mat with a large mirror on the far wall. All along the walls, ceiling and floor were those odd-looking lines. Those are seals Naruto-kun, Akane told him as he stared, that's one of the things we'll be learning about here. Naruto nodded as he explored the next 2 floors down. The second basement level was an armory, it was filled with racks upon racks of weapons, many of which he didn't recognize, but Akane pointed several out to him. That sickle with a metal chain and iron weight at the end is called a kusurigama, the long staff is called a bow staff, oh, and those little dagger-like weapons are called jut. What about those ones in the case? Asked Naruto, referring to the tri-pronged kunai in the glass case. They were bigger than the average kunai, with a wooden handle that the blonde noticed had more of those seals on it. They were mounted in a glass case that was hung on the wall at the far end, there were nearly 100 as far as Naruto could count. Those were the special weapon that your father designed his most prized jutsu with, Akane said. I can't tell you much about it because frankly, I don't understand the mechanics behind it, but once you get more knowledge on how it works, I'm sure you'll be able to recreate them. Now, there's one more floor for you to look at. This one is the most important and where we'll be getting our information for the jutsu you'll be learning. The last floor was a library, easily twice the size of the Hokage library, with nearly 100 shelves filled with all kinds of books, jutsu scrolls, schematics for exotic-looking weapons and maps. The library was divided into several categories, non-shinobi related material in one section, Taijutsu, Jinjutsu, Ninjutsu, Fuinjutsu and Kinjutsu all had their own sections as well. Each section was further divided by subsections, the jutsu going by rank E, D, C, B, and S. Go into the ninjutsu section Naruto-kun, Akane instructed, there's a jutsu in here that I think would be great boon for you. Which jutsu is that? Asked Naruto as he began scrolling through the ninjutsu section of the library. I believe I remember your mother calling it Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. After learning the Kage Bunshin, Naruto's training began to skyrocket as he used the jutsu to its fullest effect. The reason for this was just because of what the jutsu did. The Kage Bunshin no Jutsu could create any number of copies of the user capable of cohabitating with their surroundings, performing jutsu, and engaging in battle. They dispersed in a puff of smoke when sufficiently damaged or at the user's discretion. When clones are created, the user's chakra was evenly distributed among them, making it easy for the user to quickly expend all their chakra. The best part about this jutsu was that any knowledge a clone gained during its existence was transferred to the user when it dispersed. For normal people this wouldn't mean much, but for some who had even more chakra than the current Hokage, it was the perfect training jutsu. Every morning Naruto would make upwards of 100 clones, a feat he could do thanks to his near-perfect chakra control, harnessed from 3.5 years of ridiculous training, and Akane letting him use her Yaki to reinforce the clones. He would divide them into 3 groups, an elemental manipulation group, a Fuin jutsu group, and a chakra control group for his ever-increasing reserves. His chakra control was more a matter of maintaining control as his chakra continued to increase. Having perfected many of the exercises Akane had given him, even the ones that demons did for their Yaki, he had no real need to gain more. The only control exercises he couldn't do were the ones that required what the blonde jokingly referred to as bijuu amounts of chakra, meaning up to 5 taels worth of chakra. His Fuin jutsu was progressing slowly, though thanks to his innate talent in the subject it was faster than other people twice his age went. Right now he couldn't do more than make basic storage scrolls and exploding tags, but it was progress, and he had only started last month. He had yet to truly touch on any ninjutsu beyond some of the more basic ones, mainly because most ninjutsu seemed to be elemental in nature. Because of this, Akane had him get some chakra paper to learn what his affinity was. He stared at the torn, burnt and crumpled pieces of paper on the ground. The reaction he had gotten was not expected, having literally shredded itself to pieces before several pieces burst into flames and the other half wrinkled. So, fire, wind and lightning then? Asked Naruto unsurely. Yes, Akane said, also staring at the paper, though she had more glee than shock. It looks like you have 3 elements, strong ones too. I would suspect your main element is wind, since it was the one that showed up on the paper first. Your father was a wind element, so it's not surprising. The fire you got from me, being a being of fire and all that. And the lightning. Your mother, though it is surprising since her main element was water. Akane shrugged, but she did have a small lightning affinity as well. The first element they trained in was wind, being Naruto's main element. The first step had been to split a leaf using his chakra. It was a little difficult, but thanks to his clones, he had managed it within the month. The key, Naruto had learned, was to imagine your chakra as 2 sharp edges grinding against each other. It was after he had accomplished this that Akane spoke of her plan to give Naruto some experience as a ninja. Naruto-kun, I think we're done for the day. Head on home and get into the seal. I take it you have something important to tell me? Akane only ever asked him to come into the seal if she had something important to talk to him about. Her simply yes confirmed his thoughts. Alright. Naruto shouted, getting the attention of his Kage Bunshin. It's time to head out, begin dispelling yourselves in groups of 5 every 5 minutes. He had learned from experience that if he had them dispel all at once it would knock him out cold from an overload of information. When there were only 3 of you left, place all of the scrolls back into the house. Asu. The clone saluted and began dispelling. In the meantime Naruto made his way back to his apartment, having discussed with Akane the benefits of keeping appearances by living in his apartment as opposed to the Namikaze household. Entering his apartment Naruto took a quick shower before laying down on his bed and entering the seal. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. So what did you want to talk to me about, Akane-chan? Akane-chan. Naruto frowned as he looked around and saw that the redhead wasn't there. Frowning he began to walk around in an effort to search for her. As he was walking through the forest, a sound caught his attention. He stopped and listened for a moment, straining his ears to hear the noise. He soon discovered that it was singing. Well, more like humming, since there were no words to the song. He listened for a moment, thinking it was easily the most beautiful sound he had ever heard when he realized that the only two people in the seal were him and a cane. I didn't know a cane could sing so well, he mumbled to himself, then again, I've always thought she had a beautiful voice. He shook his head and ran towards the clearing where he heard her. Hey Akane-chan, you said you wanted Naruto tailed off and felt his eyes widen to epic proportions as he saw a sight that most men, and possibly many women, would die for. Akane was currently bathing in one of the lakes that he had made within his mindscape. This one had a large waterfall, which she was currently standing next to. Completely naked. Her light tanned skin was glistening in the light as droplets of water ran down her perfect, unblemished and tantalizing skin, running over every curve and contour of her gorgeous body, which was far too perfect to be human. She currently had her back slightly turned to Naruto, presenting him with a 3/4 view, just enough for the swell of her right breast to be in perfect sight of him. And the water where she was standing only reached to a little higher than mid-thigh, allowing her perfectly tight ass to be seen for all, or at least, to be seen for Naruto. Her 9 tails that were sticking out of her back where the tailbone was, were also cleaning her, rubbing against different parts of her body, and adding a sense of erotica to the scene. Her eyes were currently closed as she continued to hum, lifting her hands and rubbing some water on them, so she didn't notice the blonde who was currently gawking at her. Naruto, who had yet to understand the mechanics behind what makes males and females different, beyond the obvious differences in shape, was being given a prime view of what a perfect woman was today. Having no idea about the birds and the bees, and still being too young to really understand the sexuality and sensuality of what he was seeing, he was unable to cope with the sight of a nude Akane. Because of this, Naruto's mind shut down, his eyes glazed over, and he blacked out while somehow remaining in an upright position. Finished with her bath, Akane sighed in relief. Ever since Naruto had created this mindscape, things had been much easier for her. It helped greatly that she could not only take some time to wash herself while being surrounded by nature, but that she could also feel the grass when she walked on it or the water she was currently bathing in. It wasn't quite as nice as being in the real world, but it was good enough that she would be eternally grateful to Naruto for making this for her. Maybe I should give him a special thanks, she thought with a giggle, right before she sighed. If only he weren't so young. Turning around, she opened her eyes and blinked in surprise as she saw Naruto, eyes completely glazed over and mouth ajar, standing not but a few feet from the lake. She blushed a bit as she realized that she had taken too long. Obviously she should have taken a bath quicker rather than luxuriate in the water. She felt embarrassed at being seen by the 8-year-old boy. However, that soon gave way to her slightly mischievous side as she stalked up to him and, gently swaying her hips as she stood not but a foot in front of him. Like what you see Naruto-kun? She asked, modulating her voice in a way that would send any man into an orgasm or die from the most intense nosebleed ever. She frowned when she got no response and looked to see Naruto, eyes still glazed over. It was only now that she was up close that she could see he wasn't looking at her so much as through her. Naruto, she said, leaning down so she could look into his eyes. Are you okay? Hey Naruto. When she got no response, Akane poked him in the forehead and watched in shock as he simply fell over. Huh? I guess his mind simply wasn't ready to see me like this. She sighed, then again he is still a little boy. Still, this is going to put a bit of a damper on my plans, and now I'm going to have to teach him about sex. Channeling some yaki into the air around her, she created a standard red kimono with a slit that ran up the side. She picked up Naruto, who by now had gone limp, and sat herself down against a tree and then placed Naruto's head on her lap. She began to play with his hair as she waited for the young boy to wake up, absently wondering how he would react when he did. She didn't have to wait long as Naruto's eyes soon fluttered a bit before blinking the light out of them. Welcome back to the land of the living, Naruto-kun. Akane gave him a foxy grin. Did you enjoy the view? View? Naruto slurred, still slightly out of it. It was then that he was inundated with images of finding Akane bathing. He shot up off of her faster than Minato Namikaze ever could, his face burning red with embarrassment as he bowed to her. I'm so sorry, Akane-chan. I had no idea you were. I mean, I knew you were here since you live here, but I didn't know that it was just. It's okay Naruto-kun, she said, halting his stuttered attempts at an apology. I'm not mad, this was my fault. I called you into the seal and took too long with my bath. I should have realized the time. Oh, well, Naruto trailed off, unsure what to say. Akane sighed and patted the spot beside her. Why don't you sit down? It's a little early, but it would be best to get this lesson out of the way now that you've seen me in such a compromising position. What conversation is that? Asked Naruto, still embarrassed about what had happened. Akane took a deep breath before she began explaining everything she knew about sex, sexual reproduction, romance between a man and woman, and the differences between the two genders. Having lived for 1,000 years, Akane knew a lot about sex, even though she herself was actually a virgin. The entire conversation took up several hours, and by the time she was done Naruto couldn't even look at her without his face turning a shade of red that put Akane's hair color to shame. She sighed, realizing her chance at getting Naruto his first kill would have to wait for now. There was no way he could deal with combat while in this situation. Why don't you head on out of the seal and get some sleep? We'll continue training tomorrow, okay? Alright, Naruto stuttered, disappearing from the seal as quick as he could. It was the first time he felt the need to get away from Akane, and the redhead couldn't help but sigh as she wondered what their relationship would be like now. I guess I'll just have to find out later, she mumbled as she decided to get some rest herself. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Another month passed, and since that night where Naruto learned far more about woman and sex than anyone his age ever should, things had been tense between him and Akane since then. The young blonde still barely found himself capable of even looking the young-looking woman in the eye without blushing. Ever since that night he had had several vivid dreams filled with Akane in various situations like the one he had seen her naked, only he had also been involved. Dreams of an older version of himself and Akane doing acts that he was unprepared to do himself. Even worse, Naruto had found himself discreetly looking at the women of Konoha whenever he walked through the village. It took a concerted effort on his part to keep himself from looking, and even then, it usually failed, and he found himself comparing these women to the one that currently resided in his mind. He was starting to wonder if there may be something wrong with him. He had yet to even reach puberty, and here he was staring at and comparing women's looks. Akane wasn't helping the situation either. Sometimes she was just as bad as Naruto, unable to look him in the eye or even speak to him. At other times she was extremely playful, teasing him beyond all reason with comments laced in innuendo, or even the occasional time where she would bend over and present him with a perfect view of her tight derriere, her ample cleavage. Naruto wasn't sure what to do. His body was unable to respond to these sensual acts, but his mind was far more developed than his body. The fact that was actually proven true during one of the few times Naruto and Akane actually had a peaceful moment where they didn't feel awkward around each other. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Flashback. Naruto had just finished getting his ass kicked by Akane, lasting nearly 2 hours against the vixen in their spar. It was something he had noticed that she did, the redhead never let a spar go past 2 hours. She would fight just well enough to be slightly better than Naruto, then when the 2-hour mark was up, she would end it quicker than Naruto could say Kyuubi. Good job, your improvement is astounding, Akane said in genuine admiration. Naruto just groaned as he pushed himself off the ground, wondering what hit him. It will feel different when you fight in your real body, since sparring here in this seal only helps you learn the stances. You will need to begin practicing your katas outside of the seal in order to ensure that your movements are ingrained in your muscle memory. Right, Naruto said, standing up and wobbling over to a lake. He looked at his body to see his clothes in ruins, while he was covered in sweat and bruises. He absently wondered how everything that happened in the seal could feel so real, despite this being nothing more than a representation of his mind. Shrugging the thoughts off, Naruto knelt down and began to wash his face off, splashing the water onto his face and rubbing vigorously. As he was doing that, Naruto got a good look at his reflection on the water's surface. Akane-chan, he said with a small frown. Yes? Asked Akane, walking over to him. How come I look older in my reflection than I do in real life? His reflection in the water looked older than he did. He would have to say he looked around 11 years old rather than his 8 years of age. He had never gotten to see himself in the seal before, but he knew that when he looked in the mirrors at his apartment, he didn't look like this. Oh, right, sorry, I forgot to mention that this would happen. When Naruto looked up at her, Akane continued to explain, as I said before, this area we are currently residing in is called your mindscape. It is a mixture between a representation of the seal and your mind, which is my theory on why you can change it. The body you possess within this mindscape is not your real body, it is a representation of yourself. She stopped talking as she saw Naruto frown and thought, knowing he would get it, he was a lot smarter than most people gave him credit for. So I look older, because my mind is older than my body. Something like that, yes, she said, though that's simplifying things. You are a lot more intelligent and mature than any of the other kids your age. I suspect that the more you learn and experience, the older your mental image gets. After all, age is more about life experiences than the number of years lived. That makes sense, Naruto said, looking back into the reflection of the lake with a thoughtful look on his face. Flashback end. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Naruto-kun, Akane said as Naruto finished his last Taijutsu kata. They had decided that he would work on his Taijutsu outside of the seal as well as inside, so while his clones were working on whatever task he had given them, he was working on ingraining his fighting style into muscle memory. Yes, Akane-chan. asked Naruto. It had taken the entire month for him to start calling her that again, and even now, after all this time, he still blushed when he said her name. Thankfully Akane couldn't see it since she was inside the seal and could only see what he saw. I believe it's time we begin working on the task I had been about to assign to Yao before the incident. Naruto blushed at remembering what she was talking about. What is it? He heard the redhead take a deep breath within his mind. Naruto, I believe it's time you got your first kill. What if Naruto becomes a wolf? Bijuu end here and thanks for watching my video till the end.